Never mind.
Well, welcome to the Roundabout cast, where Joe just said something very baffling, and then we're live.
Yeah, welcome to Being with a Beesh. My
No,
name is
no,
Joe.
we're super mega cast. We're super mega cast this week.
No, save it for another week. I like binging with Babish.
Today we
Oh, is
got
that what you said? Okay.
a plain chicken chipotle sandwich. Step one, you get yourself a nice Italian roll. Step two, you get you some chipotle chicken. Put that on there. Step three, put some pepper jack cheese on. Step
Yeah.
four, consume.
You guys didn't know this was the cooking episode.
Mmm.
I got no, I got
I
no
didn't know it was
segue off
cooking.
of that because none of our topics are actually cooking related.
Let's make them cooking related.
Let's not. Let's just roll in to the first topic. You guys are making it hard for me today. Jesus.
Go on. I was gonna say
Which-
Gorsh, and then I was gonna say God, and I went Gord.
Thanks, Goofy.
I thought everyone should know that.
We should know that.
Should know that.
Okay. First topic. I'm gonna have to cut all of that from the individual video because no one's gonna sit
Oh,
through
no.
that. Our first topic today is going to be me and Joe are gonna discuss Resident Evil 2, which we've
Oh, boy.
recently completed.
Okay, here's the thing about Resident Evil. I think the title for the series sounds awesome, but I know a lot of people who are like, oh, Resident Evil's such a dumb name. I think it sounds cool.
Well, it's a dumb name because in Japan it's called Biohazard, which is
Oh.
more fitting because every entry in the series is about biohazard, like viruses causing
Yeah.
zombie
Yeah, but
outbreaks.
it makes sense a little bit in 2. It makes sense in 7 for
Yeah,
sure.
because-
Seven
Is it-
is the one where in Japan 7 is called Biohazard Resident Evil, but
Yeah,
in
because
America it's called Resident Evil Biohazard. But like, there's no biohazards mostly in that game at all. Well, never mind. I guess there are.
Yeah, there's only like one or two games that are like actually in a house, right? Or like mansion or
there's
whatever.
Well,
one.
resident could also mean just a community resident, like residence.
Yeah, some shit like that.
Okay,
Okay.
then you can kind of stretch most of them to fit that, but
But we're talking about specifically Resident Evil 2.
the remake,
The remake.
that
the
came
remake.
out in 2019
Yes.
came out in March, just before Kingdom Hearts 3, so I slept on it for a while. I was waiting for it to go on sale.
I slept on it, and then Kingdom Hearts 3, and then I'm like, well, I want some more Japanese bullshit in my life.
Yeah, it's kind
Okay,
of a
look,
problem
Resident
if your
Evil 2.
game came out around the same time as Kingdom Hearts 3.
It was rough,
Yeah.
and
It's a shame, because this game's great.
this is a really good game. How are we gonna tackle this, Joe?
Well, Resident Evil 2 is a story about Claire and Leon. I forget Claire Redfield and Leon Kennedy.
Kennedy, yes,
Future star of Resident Evil 4.
yes.
Leon is a newly employed police officer, detective,
He's a police officer,
police officer
just straight up.
for Raccoon City, and Claire is brother to
She's Chris Redfield's sister, and Chris
Yeah.
Redfield is one of the protagonists from Resident Evil 1, and he works in the police
Stars.
office, STARS, which is like their SWAT unit, their special division.
yeah. And so Chris has gone missing. His last known location was Raccoon City, so Claire has gone to investigate. And along the way, they run into each other and a horde of zombies. And at the beginning of the game, you have to choose to either be Claire or Leon. Your first playthrough is relatively the same for both, with some story differences, and your second playthrough is very different.
So, one thing I wanted to get to with this review is that I actually haven't completed one of the B playthroughs. I completed both of the A's. So, Joe might actually know more about this than I might with the differences, because I'm still going
I
through
think
it.
I also ended up doing A2 by accident.
You did 2 A's as well? So-
Yeah, I just went like, Claire, that one, and then I went and did that one.
So it's not a B playthrough then, because I started Claire B, and
Yeah.
well, I guess we should back it up. The way the game works is, you have to get the full story. You have to play as both characters, and generally the way it's going to go for a lot of people is you pick one character to begin with, and then once you complete it, you get access to the other character's B scenario. So if you start with Leon, you get Leon A, which is a easier playthrough, and then you get Claire B, where I started a Claire B run where instead of starting in the beginning of the police station, you start at the back, and your most of the stuff you do in the beginning of the game is in the East Wing as opposed to the West Wing. Mr. X is like immediately there.
Oh god.
It's so terrifying because you get to the middle room and your B playthrough is canonically after the first one. So you get to the main hall.
Not during, not after.
It's during but after. So like it's
Oh,
concurrent,
that's right.
but you start after because
Yeah.
as soon as you get to the middle to the main hall, Marvin's already dead and he's already a zombie. The main hall is no longer a save point, and in the computer where in the beginning you see that cop, and then you go to the hallway and he gets chopped in half. In that hallway, in that same computer, you see Mr. X walking down the west hall, and he sees a camera and he smashes it, and you're like, oh fuck, this is how we're gonna start.
Yeah.
So I don't know all about the B playthrough, but I can talk about both characters' A playthroughs because this is enough for me to give the game a rating, and I'm still gonna play it. I'm gonna try to do both of the Bs as well.
Yeah. The game needs to be played 4 times.
Yeah, basically that actually unlocks a true ending as well, so it is actually kind of mandatory to do the 4 playthroughs. Let's talk about the game itself. So Resident Evil is a series that I've played. I've only played 2 of them, but I've watched a lot of the others.
I
waiting.
played 4 and 5. I didn't play 6 and 7.
Okay, I've played
Yeah.
2 now and 7, but it's a series that I've always respected from afar, like a coward. Watch other people get scared for me. Actually, one of my most terrifying childhood memories is my brother and my cousin were playing Resident Evil 1 on the PlayStation 2, and I was in the room, and I was kind of behind them, like they were on like a couch or like a bed, and I was somehow behind them. And they get to this cutscene where you run into the first zombie, and they ran out of the room and they locked me in, and I started crying because I was locked in with the zombie in the video game. It was terrifying. So speaking of terrifying, this game really brings the scares, I think. I've heard some people say that it doesn't. I don't know, man. This game stressed me the fuck out.
I want to say that I felt more stressed than I did like scared.
Okay,
if that makes sense.
fair. I might agree, but there was some scares for sure.
It makes you really like go on high alert during the game.
And the game has a really nice pace and flow to the scares because so the game starts and you're exploring the police station, and the police station is really big. It's probably the biggest of the 3 areas that you get to play through. And as you're exploring, you're introduced to zombies, and you're like, okay, they're pretty tough. They're scary because it takes so many bullets to put them down. So you end up in these scenarios where it's like, shit, there are 3 zombies here. That is unbeatable. So you need to really plan it out, and it puts you on high alert. You want to make sure not to waste your items.
Or like even sometimes like you don't even like try to kill the zombies. You're just like, I'm gonna just shoot you to stagger you real quick so I can just like sneak by and go into this door. And
I found out after that that's actually like the pro strat is to you shoot them in the kneecap, which is a really good stun, and then you run by because it's more ammo efficient to do. And you
can like shoot off their knees too.
That's what I do a lot. I blow off their legs so that way they can't really chase me down or open doors. So as you're going through the station, now you're introduced to a new enemy type called Lickers. And these guys look fucking terrifying, but they can't see. They can only hear. So you have to walk around them. And as you're walking around them, they're on the walls right next to you. So it really is really spooky. And the annoying part is, oh shit, there's a Licker and a zombie in this room. And the zombie can see you, so you have to deal with him. But if you run or shoot, the Licker's going to come after your ass. And if you're playing Leon, you only have a shotgun to deal with him for the most of the game, and it takes like 5 bullets, and your shotgun carries 4, so you're gonna have to reload in the encounter. Like
5 bullets, I would just brain them like with 1 or 2.
Then you were getting critical hits. With Claire was a lot easier because she gets a grenade launcher, which fucking decimates them. You get less ammo for it in general, but 2 shots basically kills them.
And you can kill yourself.
Yeah, but I didn't run into that problem ever. Um,
Hefty trade-offs.
so now you've explored a lot of the station. You've gotten used to these 2 main enemy types. All of a sudden, motherfucking Mr. X shows up and gives me like an existential breakdown, um, which is this hulking man in a trench coat and a hat, and he will chase you down through the station, and until you realize that he reacts on movement, and if you slam into doors and shoot enemies, he's gonna zone in on your location from far away. Um, until you get that, it is like the scariest. It's probably the peak tension of the game. Is those early parts with Mr. X.
And it's interesting because it's almost like a time limit on yourself without being a time limit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah,
And you like essentially depending on how fast you like move determines how fast the time ticks down, and which is almost counterintuitive and makes you like I gotta get there quick, but I'll alert Mr. X. But there's zombies, but there's little Mr. X. And you're just like
and there's always the tension of okay, I don't know where he is, but if I happen to run into him as I turn this hallway, I'm trapped. So
Yeah.
you get to these choke points where like, please God, don't let me run into him. And you just hope that you don't, and you strategize as you move through the station. There's a part in the library where I started with Claire. She was my first playthrough, and I did that whole library puzzle with Mr. X chasing me. So I would move some bookcases, run back up, wait for him to climb the ladder, run back down, move more bookcases. It's just overall, and just the design of the station is also really good. Where
yeah.
you
I
get
think the station design is like one of the best like levels I've ever like run around in because everything's on top of each other and you're like, okay, I'm here. Here's this thing. I need to get to here. How do I get here? And everything like there's a lot of verticality.
yeah, there you go.
And going back on itself, and it's just really cool because you can look down at one point, and be like, "Oh, hey, look, that's the save point." Oh, there's
Yeah, when you're on the third floor and you're looking all the way down, and it looks completely different from that high up. The station really rewards you for knowing the station first of all, and being good at planning routes because you'll get an item, and you have to manage having that item in your inventory, and your inventory's small, so having that item there is significant, and you have to plan a route to get where that item goes. Basically every item is an extrapolation of a key. Basically, they're just fancy like a USB stick and a sapphire and
some are keys.
Some are literal keys. And you have to figure out, okay, I finally got this key. This opens up all these exploration paths. How do I get there efficiently? Which rooms should I avoid because of enemies? And is Mr. X nearby? And you have to get all that. Then
even then, you'll run into rooms. You're like, oh, a liquor spawned here. That's great.
Right. There's the mechanic where you can board up walls, and if you're boarding up walls, it's using one of your resources, but it means that enemies won't spawn there.
Yeah.
So there's this hallway in the West Wing where there's like 4 or 5 windows, and chances are you're not going to be able to board them all up. So every time an event happens in the game, it might repopulate that hallway with zombies. Very frustrating. At this point of the game, you've been introduced to Mr. X. You get to each character's individual story, where Leon gets to do stuff with Ada, and he goes into meets that reporter guy. He has to fight a lot of dogs.
Fight a crocodile.
That comes a little after, and then Clara gets to meet Sherry, and she has to deal with this dickbag officer for the police
He's the
station.
chief of police.
Yeah, the chief of police, and she gets a whole different section of the map than Leon does, where like she gets a save point there, and Leon never gets to go there, and vice versa for Leon. At that point, yeah, you go into the sewers, and so Leon gets a little section where he gets to fight a giant crocodile, and Claire gets a little section where she has to go rescue Sherry from the orphanage.
I think you control Sherry at one point.
Yeah, you control both Ada and Sherry, which I really like Ada's little hacking gun. That was fun.
That was the hardest. I panicked so much on the Mr. X part of the Ada playthrough.
I kind of like I kind of just danced around them, so it was kind of funny. I would just there's a table in the middle, so I just kind of move around them and.
There was a
do
point where I
that
was like, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to go. Because I wasn't paying attention because I saw Mr. X coming up and I was watching him rather than watching the thing that was opening.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know where to go.
I've seen other people struggle with that. Like, it's a high tension spot. The sewer level itself, I'd probably put it as like my least favorite, but it's also the hardest. So I got still good memories from it.
No, I think the area after that's my least favorite.
Really? I actually really like it. Might be my favorite area, the lab, because so the sewer has really tough enemies. It's exhausting on your resources and your ammo. The layout has you running into enemies a lot.
You got a bitch of a boss fight,
which I know you got stuck in one of your playthroughs, right?
Yeah, I need to not restart, but like reload my Claire playthrough because I essentially like basically at one point when like there's the point where you're like going across this pathway and you jump down, he hit me and so I immediately dropped down to like 1 HP.
Now to be fair, you can do that boss without getting hurt. Especially if you have ammo, you can put him down.
Yeah, I agree. But like essentially like in the part where you're just supposed to be running, I ran into something by accident and he literally hit me and I'm just at 1 HP now. I'm like, fuck.
Yeah, it might just be worth reloading. In these games, it's always good to rotate your saves for sure.
Yeah.
And you don't like the lab? I thought the lab was rad, dude.
And I don't like the lab because it's a lot more linear than the other places.
It's linear, but I feel like every wing and every room is really interesting to do.
I think there's some interesting stuff, but it also is the one thing that makes that like it converts to when Resident Evil starts like being really like appealing to me. And that's when like you get into like the really science-y and government conspiracy
Umbrella
kind of
being shit.
And I really like the art museum and I like the police officer station because there's like a connectivity to it. It's like you're Leon, you're kind of thrown into this situation and you're just a regular guy and you're in literally a police station and like that's renovating an art museum or whatever. So there's some sort of like ground level basis there. And it feels very real because there's very human elements into it, like the police officer was taking bribes from the company.
Right.
And so it's a lot more of an interesting setting to me, but then you get to like this underground area and you're just like it's just huge and you're just like this was under the city the entire time and no one
Joe, the fucking Chris Redfield punches a boulder into a volcano in Resident Evil 5, okay? It's fine.
I'm not saying that's good either. Like,
it's I feel like part of the identity of the series is being weird.
Yeah, and like to me, like the first part of Resident Evils are always the best because it's the most. You don't know what's happening. You don't know where you are. You're kind of in this very alien situation. You don't know what you're going to move on to next. But then once you get into like the secret lab, it kind of demystifies everything.
I suppose. I guess I just really like the level design and the enemies you fight there and.
I thought the tree enemies were just like fuck, God, they're terrifying and they're awesome. But
that's what's cool is that the game gets spooky there because I feel like the sewers is more action heavy section, which it raises the stakes because you're running out of ammo and health at that point.
Yeah.
But
I also feel like that section's a lot easier once you know what your ultimate goal is.
That's true. Which is,
so because when I was running around as Leon, I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to be doing. I just need to find doors, and then you figure out you need these chess pieces, and you're like, oh, okay, I'll go find those, and then when
that
I
applies
went
to the whole game though, for sure.
Yeah, and part of this game too is just learning how to speed run it. That's like its kind of draw is that you just get faster at going through the game.
One of the trophies of this game is you have to beat the game in like 3 hours with both characters.
Yeah.
So if you're one of those achievement hunters, like they also enforce you to do the speed running and stuff. Yeah. Overall, really love this game. I'm definitely gonna do those beat playthroughs. I need a break of Mr. X for a little bit because in the beginning of a B playthrough, you do not have that much to work with. So
Yeah.
I need to re-prepare my butt.
Yep. We might have to do another one where we talk about the beat playthroughs because I hear they're very different.
If they're different enough, we'll do a quick segment on them as well.
Yeah.
But something tells me that they're both going to be like a B playthrough would be very different from an A one, but both of the B ones would be similar. That's what
Yeah.
I would feel.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll definitely do a follow up if it's necessary. But I really like this game. It's a contender for Game of the Year for me right now.
Yeah, this is my one of my surprise gets. I'm like, oh wow, this jumped up there in terms of games I really enjoyed this year.
For sure. Yeah, Capcom's fucking slaying it. They've
Yeah,
already
man.
announced Resident Evil 3 remake. They're working on it.
Are they? Did they announce that?
Yes.
When?
It was announced not too long ago. I can source you later.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot. I also played Resident Evil 1 remake, which is also really good. So yeah, I'm into Resident Evil now. I'm looking forward to 4
Congrats.
getting on the Switch, so I can finally play that. And 3 getting the remake, and 8 whenever that comes out.
Anyways,
Yeah, we did it.
Resident Evil 2 remake. Um, an unfortunate 5 out of 5 because I feel like I give those out every week.
It's so good. Yeah, I think I have to as well. I gotta give
The
it
other
the
thing about
fiver.
it too is that I believe Resident Evil 2 stuck with the Resident Evil 1 formula of having like the fixed camera angles.
Yes, and they did a really good job at changing that. One last thing I wanted to bring up, yeah, is that in this game you're rewarded for being slow and aiming, because the longer you aim, the higher your crit chances are. So in a way, it kind of tries to replicate how you do combat in those games, and it uses this 3D environment to just change up the spooks, which is good.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
good game, great game. And now we're recording, and we're gonna talk
okay.
about One Piece, which Bradley has made progress. I believe you finished an arc, didn't you?
Yes, I finished the Rogueport arc,
Damn,
which I imagine.
Hold on,
I
is it
imagine
not? Is it not Rouge Town?
that's the. Well, I'm like, or maybe it's Rogue Town, Rouge Town. I see when I see Rogue or Rouge, I don't know how to pronounce it.
No one knows.
I imagined it's Rogue because like pirates are rogues, but it could also be Rouge, like
No,
but,
it's called-
but it's
Rouge
Rogue
Town.
Town. Well, here's the
Yeah,
thing.
okay. Yeah, I
People
think you're right. I
online are
think
gonna
it's
know it
Town.
as Luge Town.
Oh, Rogueport is from Paper Mario, isn't it?
Yes, you were
Okay,
confusing me this whole time. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah.
People will get it flipped between Luge and Rouge or whatever because R's and L's are, they're
it's
tough
only
to
got-
translate.
the Poor kids called it Rouge Town.
Okay, we'll call it Rouge Town.
Why?
Yes. Because it's Rouge Town.
We gotta call it something.
Rogue
For
Town.
4 kids?
No, 4Kids doesn't. No, dude. A lot of the fans also call it Luge Town because that's how the scans translated it back in the day.
It is called Rouge Town.
I'm gonna call it Rouge Town.
Well, I'm glad we spent a minute and 15 seconds on how to pronounce the name of this arc, but let's move on.
I think we'll do good. This discussion won't be as long as our long part, just because this arc is like a fifth the length.
Much
of
shorter.
that.
Yeah.
But we do have really, really good stuff.
Let's do it.
So this arc starts off with the crew is ready to head out to the Grand Line, but they stop by Rouge Town first to see where Gold Roger was both born and executed. And this is just like I feel like we have to do this, right? Because Luffy's about to like truly start his journey. So it's like let's go see like what created this world he wants to be the king of.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and so it's just really cool that we get to come see this and kind of get some inspiration before we really start the journey. Everyone kind of splits off doing their own little thing for a little bit. Zoro briefly runs into this girl who looks and acts almost exactly like his childhood friend, who's the reason he's on this journey.
Oh man, big theories spawns from this
Um,
character.
And there's some wild stuff, man. This whole scene in the sword shop, we kind of get a lot of we kind of get some little bits and pieces of like exposition and world building, learning about these swords. I believe there are 40 fine ones, 11 supreme ones, and I can't remember the excellent ones.
There's also the Black Blades, right? That's its
Yeah.
own category.
Yeah, and so we kind of learn about these. I'm like, okay, this is cool. So this is gonna be an element we have now. We
Very
kind
true.
of we get to hear a little bit about the Navy presence in this town, which I'm going to be talking about the Navy a lot in this discussion.
Yo, finally.
I think you guys will be pleased with where we go with that.
Joe's been looking forward to Navy talk.
Oh yeah. So yeah, that whole scene's fun while they're doing that.
I like his the ballsiness of him to just hold out his arm while the sword is spinning downwards, and
Oh yeah, because
What?
he's just like, man,
I'm a lucky
like-
bitch.
yeah, I'm a lucky motherfucker.
If this sword wants me, it can have me.
Yeah. So while they're doing that, Nami is going out being a rich bitch and buying everything she wants.
Gotta love it.
Sanji is of course looking for fish. Usopp's kind of doing his thing.
God,
He
what
kind of
is
meets up with each of the different people.
For a hot second, I got Usopp and Sanji mixed up from my mind. I was like, why the fuck would Usopp be looking for fish?
Well, I don't even remember what Usopp did in this arc. He was so barely there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then so Luffy obviously goes to Gold Roger's execution platform, and without hesitating, he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go stand on top of it and yell stuff." So, which
As
is
you do.
as you do.
I want to draw attention to the panel where Luffy first sees the execution platform.
And all the people just disappear.
Yeah, it's just Oda's really good for doing backgrounds, and he uses the inverse of that really well here, where Luffy's in this crowd of people, and he uses negative space to it's just Luffy and the execution platform, and even for someone as much of a goober as Luffy, you can tell the weight of this moment and like how he thinks it's so special, and I really like that.
Man, and speaking of backgrounds, this might be considered like a 1 or 2 minute break from the beat by beat, but I want to talk about Oda and backgrounds. He's really good at drawing them, but he's also really good at knowing when he doesn't need to draw them.
Yes.
Anytime we move to a new place or if we're in a battle and people shift positions, that's when he'll draw like the really detailed backgrounds just to give you a mental image of where everyone is.
Whenever stuff is spatial oriented.
Yeah, but like once we know the background, if we have a moment where it's just someone talking or just someone swinging a sword, he doesn't really bother drawing the background because we know what it looks like, and he can use that for like motion lines or
Speed
gestures.
lines, yeah.
Otherwise,
and-
clog up the image. Because
Yeah.
imagine like that scene where there's Arlong and he pulls out his teeth and like he's chomping on it, and you see like the bit by bit, so you can follow it as like he's chopping at Luffy.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if like there was like you could see the image of the
God.
of the thing behind it. It would just like the lines would be everywhere. Like it just
Be so distracting.
Yeah, it'd be too busy.
But meanwhile, while they're talking, you get some faraway shots of like you get to see the pool and you get to see the background while they're talking, and Arlong's talking about how superior humans are. So he knows when to show us backgrounds and when to focus on the
And
action.
that's how he can do this weekly. I think it's really amazing that he found a technique that is both easier and quicker to do, and also looks better. So,
Man,
it's very nice. I've been wanting to fit that in somewhere, and I just had to bring it up because someone said the word background.
hey man, that's how we go.
Okay. So Luffy's doing his thing on the platform. We get that amazing shot where he's like, "Holy shit, this is where the man himself was killed." And so then we had kind of gotten hints from the townspeople. We kind of heard the name Captain Smokey thrown around. And we kind of have like
Captain
some
Smokey?
severely linked
Is that a
right?
joke, or do you think his name is Smokey?
Is that not what it is? Oh, Smoker.
Okay.
Okay.
Chaser.
Okay, this isn't Friday.
Joe.
It's not Smokey, it's Smoker.
Joe, back to the dungeon with you. You can go hang out with Bellamere.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. Before we actually meet him, we get an impression of him from 3 different kinds of people. The girl's name was it Taguchi? What was that?
Tashigi.
Tashigi?
Yes.
Yes, she.
Okay. So she's one of the people we get an impression of Smoker from. I almost said Smokey again. We get an impression of him from her, and she's like, "No, he's not a monster. Like he's doing his job." And I'm like, "Okay, well you're Navy, so let's see what other people think, right?" a lot of normal townspeople seem to be kind of scared of him. And I'll talk about why I think that is in a minute, even though I don't think you should be scared of him. Um, and then we also see just straight up criminals who are like, man, fuck him, fuck your boss, he threw our boy in jail. So I'm like, okay, we have a person of the law who's like, I like him. We have criminals who don't like him. I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. But then we also have civilians who are kind of wary about him. So before we got like the big personality reveal of Smoker, which when I say personality reveal, I'm gonna say kind of the litmus test for what kind of person he was the girl's ice cream falling on him.
Oh, that was so sweet. Yeah.
Because in this story, someone's reaction to a girl's ice cream falling on them will probably tell you everything you need to know about that character.
Oda is that kind of writer. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, like, we get there and it ends up being revealed that, you know what, he's a tough looking guy, but he deep down he is a sweetheart and he is a man of the law, and he's very competent.
Another personality litmus test of him is just like, what is another angle of his personality? Okay, he's also a badass who rides a smoke bike, and like you can tell he's just like, he's a cool, tough guy, and that's the kind of character that you're being portrayed with here.
Before we got to that actual ice cream personality reveal, I suspected he would end up being a fairly good guy, for a few reasons. There's kind of some tangible reasons and one kind of meta reason. For the tangible ones, I don't. It's kind of like when I said that I didn't think Kobe would be dead set on joining the Navy if all of the Navy was fucked up. It's kind of the same thing. I don't think our sword girl would look up to Smoker if he was a bad guy, just because she seems like such a lawful, good, and righteous person right now.
Not to mention, she's his lieutenant, so
yeah.
Would she really put up with that if he wasn't like at least redeemable?
Yeah, so I was pretty confident there. And then there was kind of this little, I think like the first real time we see him is he's stacking stones in his office, and someone barges in and the stones fall over. And all these other Navy officers we saw probably would have been like, what the fuck? And they would have like destroyed him. But he's like, well, sometimes you just gotta accept it and start over later. Like, he has patience. He didn't go ballistic. So I'm already like, okay, he's kind of different than what we've seen before.
Yeah, looks fucking sweet.
Yeah. But the thing I really wanted to mention is I was pretty confident he was going to be good because, so 3 is kind of a magic number in storytelling and comedy. And I think this is like the third, like, big encounter we've had with like a Navy guy. Like, I'd probably say Morgan is the first. Arlong Park asshole is in there. In between those, we've had like we've seen Full Body. He was in for like a chapter or two. There was another guy in Arlong Park who was unnamed for a chapter or two. As far as like the people we've gotten like entire arcs with, I'd say he's probably the third one. Like, okay, what kind of personality are we really going to see here? And so 3 is kind of a magic number. And the first 2 Navy guys that I'm talking about, Morgan and Mouse Guy and Arlong Park, are just total assholes. And so with Smoker being like the third Navy guy in this triple beat here, I guess if you want to call it, I think we needed Smokey to be a good one if he's like the third one that we're going to focus on hugely. Like, if he was an asshole, or if we had like a third major Navy captain who was an asshole before him, I think that would have been the point where I subconsciously established in my mind that, okay, the Navy just sucks. They're just all bad guys.
It was just a joke almost.
Yeah. And so I think we kind of needed him to be a good guy because, one, having that kind of subversion, like, oh, the third one, oh, he's good, subconsciously, that's just pleasing to people, I think. And so as far as doing this like 3-beat with like a bad captain, good captain, I don't know if Oda did it on purpose. I wouldn't be surprised if he did, but I think it could also easily be this thing that Willard talks about in the past about how some good writing techniques are just instinct if you've been writing for a while. So I don't know. He might have just done that.
There's also
In,
the I brought up before, but the concept that One Piece has a lot of geographical power scaling, and this is one of those cases where geographically they're closer to the Grand Line, so that navy needs to be more competent.
yeah, we
because
can't just have a guy doing whatever he
It
wants.
can't have Morgan in that navy. It needs to be a well-functioning navy, and a well-functioning navy generally is not going to have an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the Marines there, they have a good captain. They have Smoker because he's the last line before an East Blue pirate attempts to make it to the Grand Line.
yeah, it's good. It's kind of like these bad or these like very bad and hot-headed Navy captains we've been seeing. They're kind of like, I don't know if you'd call the East Blue the backwoods, but like compared to where we are right now,
I think
feels
it's
like that.
I think it's stated to be the weakest of the four blues, right?
Yeah.
Joe?
Yeah,
I think so because yes, because I know for a fact there's one that there I think it comes up in a later arc, like a much later arc, the most recent arc that just finished.
Uh-huh.
It comes up.
That I is it even a spoiler to say it's whatever.
Yeah, it's but yeah, it's they're not necessarily they're the weakest, and part of that have they explained how they get to the Grand Line yet?
I don't know. They just left the town, so
Okay,
I imagine
probably
they're
not.
sailing there.
It's a very unique way.
All right.
Yes.
So let me see what else I have to say about Smoker. Another thing I really like about his personality that's different from kind of what we've seen from other Navy captains is just the sheer level of like competence of this man. So like, you know, Morgan ended up losing to Luffy, I guess. Full body got full bodied and kind of embarrassed in the
By Sanji.
yeah.
Yeah.
The mouse captain who was an asshole. I can't remember his name if he has
Nezumi.
one. Yeah, he he gets fucking destroyed. Like the strongest things his crew has are like these musket looking guns. And even then you only got the impression that Arlong really was working with him because Arlong felt generous enough to. I don't think they could have done anything if Arlong didn't comply.
I think it was also that Arlong knew that if he caused too much trouble, the Navy would bring a hammer down on him. So he'd rather
Yeah.
just not
They're
worry.
like,
about
oh, they're gonna bring someone who actually matters, not this little bitch.
it. Yeah.
But man, with Smoker, like the moment he hears there's trouble, like the first thing that comes out of his mouth is like, okay, I need this squad here, I need this squad here, I want this squad position here with these weapons in this formation. Like, I'm like, holy shit, this guy knows it. This guy knows what he's doing.
He's
Yeah.
done. You get the impression he's done this many times before.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Like and I think, and the other thing was like a lot of the big thing significantly different about Smoker is to the other Navy officers we've met is that Smoker's the first one that we've met in a high position that legitimately wants to be a Navy person because he is like that's what he likes to do, not because of power or like wealth or like power or just like being a psychopath, a power monger.
there you go.
He likes he's a good Navy boy. He's a good commander and captain and just.
Do we not get his flashback story too in this arc?
I don't think we do.
No, I think that comes much later.
Oh wow. Okay.
I didn't see a flashback story.
Yeah.
And like, I just really appreciated that. I feel like a lot of these other Navy guys we saw in the past, even someone like Full Body, who I wouldn't say he's a bad guy.
No, he's just a little cocky.
Yeah, like even someone like him, I feel like if they saw Luffy, they'd be like, "Oh hell yeah, I'm gonna get that 30 million berries." But Smoker's just like, "Oh, he's wanted by the Navy. It's my job. I'm gonna get his ass." Like I don't think he's worried about the money.
Doesn't he even say like at one point he's like, "This guy's worth 30 billion"? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
He says something like that. And it just goes to show that he's so level-headed too and cool.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, he's not even like worried about, like you said before, getting the money. He's just like, all right, let's just do everything we can to secure this person and like be done with it, like to actually like capture him, not for fame and glory. That's like the last thing on his mind. It's what's the right thing to do here to make the best
Yeah.
decision.
And like you said, with his cool-headedness, when Luffy gets away, we don't get like a "How dare you defy the Navy?" He's just like, I guess we're going after him.
I wouldn't say it was like that. He was pissed. He was like,
Yeah, he was
shit.
pretty upset, I would say.
Did I really let this guy loose? He's 30 million's worth.
Yeah.
I gotta chase him.
We didn't get like an explosion of anger.
Yeah, he didn't
That's what I
shoot
mean.
one of his commanders.
It was a seething anger.
Yeah.
But we also get just the like. Well, I guess we shouldn't skip ahead to where Luffy escapes because we have some other big stuff going on between.
Yes,
Yeah.
let's follow your roadmap.
Yeah. So Smoker. The reason he sent his boys to the square is because very just total cowboy pirate babe who we find out is Alvida shows up, and because I recognized her from the like
Cover
buggy
story.
mini arc that appears
Yeah.
between chapters, and I was like, and then like I think it was when I saw her club, I was like, oh my god, is this Alvida?
I like how you were able to remember it from the club. It's
Yeah.
pretty good.
I think that's a really good way of Oda like foreshadowing who she is. Because like the one other than Alvida's weight, it's the fact that she had that fucking club and
She's
hitting
called
everybody.
Iron Club Alvida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's her pirate name.
And like it's just really fun. And so obviously as soon as we saw Alvida, I was like, okay, well Buggy's got to be here too. And he is, and he's out for revenge. And man, we see two new Devil Fruit users in this arc, which would be Alvida and Smoker,
Yes.
and they're very cool. Alvida had she's slippery.
Slip fruit.
Fruit
Yes, and it's very cool because
girl.
she's like, as you can tell, it slightly changed my appearance. And Luffy's like, okay. And I think it's really cool because you immediately, like, you hear the slip power and you're like, okay, I gotta see what actually we can do with this. And
Some
she can
fun
use it
shit.
to, so far we have some mobility with it. She can slide pretty fast and
She
far.
maintains her strength.
Yeah.
She can wield that thing while sliding around.
I imagine we'll see some pretty cool applications of this, or at least I hope. And then Smoker seems to be able to like, it reminds me of Hard Light, but it's like Hard Smoke. He can like grab things with it and manipulate it.
So yes, so Smoker is the first instance where we meet a completely different new type of Devil Fruit powers.
There's
Yeah,
actually
like-
3 classes of devil fruits, and you won't really know all the classes until like 2 arcs in. I think.
Because like
Yeah,
Luffy,
yeah.
Alvida, and Buggy all have fruits that change your body like on a fundamental level
Yep.
in some way.
That's called a paramecia fruit.
There you
as
go.
You'll find out later. Which is minor. So Smoker, his fruit is elemental based. So he can turn into an element, and he can manipulate that element, which includes making smoke denser to where it can grab people as well. So it becomes a dense gas
Nice.
that has a solidity to it, I guess.
Yeah, and I think his type is largely considered, I think, in universe as the most powerful type of like Devil Fruit
Yes.
of the 3 categories.
Which is how he got in this position. Because man,
Additionally, he can use the smoke to rev up his bike because One Piece technology is pretty fun and whimsical. You get like the buggy car, you get
God,
which
that
is
was so
powered by Boogie's fruit, and then you get this bike which he turns his legs into smoke and then
yeah,
uses
and then
them to rotate
Alvida
it.
like has her technique of, hey guys, hold up this slide, and she slides down it, and she just slips along the sidewalk.
You're getting to the point where like, yeah, devil fruits, they're not like the deepest power system, but they're used so fun. Like,
Yeah, they're
Oda has so
I
much fun
really
with
like the way everyone uses their stuff so far.
And also, like I've told Willer and you this before, but like really for a Devil Fruit, there's only one rule to it, and is that you cannot swim.
Yeah,
Fundamentally on the power level, and that's it. And the sky's the limit from there.
And another part of Smoker's power set is also another big world building thing, is that he has a sea prism stone baton.
Ooh.
The tip of his baton. Did you know like that scene happened already, right, Joe? Where he uses it to pin down Luffy.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sea prison. Yeah.
So what that is it's a type of stone that removes the power from Devil Fruit users. It's the same as the Devil Fruit user being underwater, but it's on contact.
Man. Okay, so that's why it's called Sea Prison.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't fully explained, but
We
it'll-
saw it. We saw it like in one panel, and I think Alvida's like, "Oh, that's the Sea Prison thing," and we didn't get much explanation after that. But I just assumed like, okay, this is gonna be a recurring weapon.
It totally is. It'll get more formal explanations. You'll learn where they come from. Another application of them, just off the top of my head, which will help you understand the world a little better, is cuffs. So it's like, oh, how would, if they capture another elemental type like Smoker, how could they keep them detained? Well, they have this technology for it.
Yeah, it's nice. No, like knowing what I do about One Piece now, if there's like a weapon or an item like that gets named, I'm like I can be reasonably confident that we're not naming it for no reason. Like it's
Yeah.
going to be relevant. So, like we wouldn't just name Zoro's sword if it wasn't significant.
Yeah. Zoro swords.
So yeah, we get the fun little sequence where Navy versus pirates versus also pirates, and man, it's a lot of fun, and it's just so cool that, and I guess we need to talk about this, how we have these series of circumstances that allow Luffy and his crew to escape, with the storm, the lightning striking at the right moment, the rain putting out the fire on a ship, or rather preventing it.
Got any
And-
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. So a lot of people, I imagine there's a lot of people who are like, "Boo, Deus Ex Machina. We just wanted to save." And I'm like, I understand not liking Deus Ex Machina stuff like that, because sometimes it can feel cheap. But I feel like here, this isn't Oda taking the cheap way out. This is him like, no, this is for real. Being king of the pirates is Luffy's fucking destiny. It's going to happen.
For sure, but there's also he uses it thematically, so that's one way where it's like it doesn't hurt.
That's
But
why it separates from just taking the easy way out for me.
there's some mysterious people that show up in this arc. Do you have any thoughts on them?
Yeah, and so they're in here briefly, and Smoker's like, okay, why are you helping him escape? Because aside from just the weather, specifically one of these guys uses like a wind blast. Smoker's like, why are you helping him? And he tries to blow it off just as, who am I to get in someone else's way? And I'm like, okay, well, this isn't just you not getting in someone's way. This is you deliberately helping this guy. So, I could speculate all day, and I could have a million different speculations, like, oh, maybe these guys are seers and they know where Luffy's going in life, or maybe they're just after Luffy themselves so they can get the money. There's a million different speculations I could make. I don't think I have enough information to draw on, but I know for a fact we're going to be seeing these guys some more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of the
I guess some mm-hms.
well, so one of the characters in there is Dragon. That's that's the guy that saves Luffy.
Is he named?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
believe he is. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so.
Smoker calls him Dragon. He's the neat dude.
A little
He's
bit.
cool. Yeah, so I'm ready to see more of them. And thanks to, I guess, fate, Luffy is able to escape, and my boys are headed off to the fucking Grand Line.
After all this time, chapter 100, the legend begins.
Yeah, I love that the legend begins where they're finally like truly heading off to the Grand Line. Is chapter 100. That's very cool.
Yeah, we weren't lying when we said One Piece starts after this arc, essentially.
Yeah,
Because
Like
shit really picks up now, world building wise, plot wise.
we're not gonna be dealing with these little East Blue bitches anymore. Like we're gonna be in the fucking Grand Line.
You're going to be getting into arcs that are either very important for worldwide events or arcs that are preliminary arcs, like setup arcs for later arcs. Like you're going to be getting to sagas at this point.
Yeah.
So this was the completion of the East Blue saga. I think most of what happens in East Blue, with the exception of a few things, kind of only pertains within itself.
Okay.
I don't know. There's a lot that comes up.
But I don't think there's any consequences of what the team does other than in Lugeport, because that.
Okay, you're right. You're right.
I'll just have to.
You could count Boogie because like he's already shown up once and he's.
That's true. That's true. But like
that's about it.
I don't. But yeah, East Blue is pretty self-contained in its like relevance of itself.
Okay.
But going forward, like it's a domino effect of everything else in the story.
The Grand Line is the stage at which the big players are playing.
That's the name of the treasure in the Grand Line.
Yeah, you know the song.
So to give you some fun facts, Bradley, the next arc and the arc after that was completely removed from the 4Kids broadcast of One Piece.
What's wrong with them, man?
Oh, you're right. Well, no, Whiskey wasn't, but
sorry, not Whiskey. The one.
Two out of the next three.
Yeah.
And see, that scares me because I can't see a One Piece arc being irrelevant enough to justify removing it.
It gets extremely awkward.
These two arcs are some of the most important arcs later in the series.
Actually, yes, these are extremely important.
Yeah, like there hasn't been a single chapter where I've been like, oh, we could remove this and everything else would still make sense.
Except
like,
Gaimon, but I'm holding out, man.
I mean, he's relevant to Buggy, I guess. So, I mean, like, you could argue for that. So, like, every chapter I feel like has been important in some way.
True.
What did you think of having the cover stories being as side stories that are canon?
I like it very much. It's kind of a way to... It's kind of like every 20 chapters, you've basically earned yourself a bonus chapter.
Yep, yeah, exactly. And what's cool is that, like, it's very fitting of One Piece, where we've talked a lot about how the world building is one of its strongest points, if not its strongest point, and how the world moves alongside the Straw Hats. It's not, the series doesn't revolve around them. There's shit happening outside of them, and this is a way for Oda to really show that and tie stuff back in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this way, when Buggy shows up later with Alvida, you're not just like completely off guard because you've been seeing these cover stories. You're like, oh, okay.
Oh, they meant something.
Yeah, because if they had just showed up without those cover stories, I'd be like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
I wanted to throw one more thing. We did a Smoker talk, but Smoker is one of those reasons where, like, we all like Smoker, right? Like, even Bradley already likes him. Me and Joe for sure like him a lot.
Oh, yeah.
He could theoretically be one of the most wasted potentials in One Piece later down the line, but there's a lot of One Piece left. So it's hard to say.
Yeah.
A lot of One Piece, a lot of characters.
But Smoker is one of my favorite characters, and he's not even that deep. Like, when you think about it, he's not, like, compared to some, like, really deep characters that we know and love, he's like, yeah, he's just a cool guy, right? But it's his place in the world, his actions. Those two are what Oda does best with characters, where even if he's not writing a character that deeply, their place in the world and the things they do in the story are so memorable to you, where it's like, these guys don't have the craziest backstories or philosophies, or they're not, like, super emotionally complex, but they're just so likable because he's so good at writing. One Piece is a series where, like, maybe a character doesn't have, like, 20 meters of depth, but they're all every single character has, like, at least 5 or 10. So,
not
like,
everyone has a tragic backstory.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just like they're all good enough to be in this world, that the world is so good and every character is at this level of goodness that it elevates everyone up.
Yeah. And the thing about Smoker that I think he has more depth than you think, Willard, because there's definitely a part in a much later arc.
Right. I'm talking about what we know now, where it's like we all like him. We've all liked him since, like, his introduction.
I was gonna say, because, like, we get to a later arc and Smoker has to make a decision, and it's
very important.
Yes.
Several times he's had to be very important. Even
I think the ones, like, the role Smoker plays is, like, extremely great because he's wonderful whenever he shows up. I'm very interested to see much later down the line where we're in a point where I don't think Smoker can play that role anymore.
Yeah,
We'll just have to see.
we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's One Piece characters all very lovable because of that.
And now you're going to the Grand Line.
We're going to the fucking Grand Line.
I'm start the Alabasta saga.
Woo! Man, the ending of that saga is when I realized One Piece was my favorite manga. At the time, I hadn't read JoJo's yet. Now they're racing neck to neck.
I'll say I feel like every year or so, one kind of might overtake the other.
Every time JoJo Line goes out, it blows your fucking mind.
Yeah, One Piece is better than JoJo when it's not in its slow segments of the arc, and JoJo is better than One Piece when it's the vice versa, or when it comes out. I'm glad I have them both in my life.
Yeah.
So to finish off One Piece talk, I have two more little short things, and
Let's do it.
it's not really a ton of analysis. It's just like, hey, this was fucking cool. Man, the panel where Luffy is on the execution platform, about to be executed by Buggy, and he's like, "I'm gonna be king of the pirates." Like he just yells it, and it's like it takes up a full page.
Big dick plays.
Like, oh, I got goosebumps.
I'd say there's some analysis to be had there. He's so sure of himself.
Yeah,
And,
It is his destiny, man, and he knows it. He knows he has the willpower to do it. And in One Piece, willpower is power. A lot of the battles
willpower is the strongest stat in One Piece.
A lot of the battles, and Bradley's already seen this, there aren't really fights of strategy and brawn. They're bouts of will.
yeah.
It's
They're
the strongest
idealistic struggles.
Yeah. They're
And,
almost abstract sometimes.
And starting from this moment on, after Luffy yells he's going to be king of the pirates, we shift pretty heavily more towards Smoker's perspective, where he's watching this fight collapse, and he watches the weather basically free Luffy and his crew and help them escape. And he's like, holy shit, this was like, this had to be some kind of force of nature pushing this man to escape.
There's a great moment where, like, right after everything comes up and Luffy comes up unscathed, which is actually extremely important later. And Sanji goes like, "Do you believe in a higher power?"
Yeah.
When Boogie's about to kill him and the lightning strikes the platform and Boogie's fried and Luffy's just like, "I'm Luffy."
Yeah. Which is super important.
Very funny.
So yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people who didn't like the Deus Ex Machina feeling stuff of this arc, but
I feel like a lot of people don't mind. First of all, a lot of people at this point aren't looking at it as deep as you were, I feel like.
Yeah.
And it's very clear that there's something going on here, either thematically or plot-wise.
Yeah, this is the first, I think, chapter or arc where, like, you realize there's something going on in the background. There's something more happening around the world.
because like I wouldn't ever, I don't think I would believe Oda would just do this for no fucking reason. Like he's Oda Sensei, so
Yeah.
I could see him doing it for a thematic purpose, but I also feel like there could also be other purposes or other.
Because outside the Shichibukai or the Seven Warlords, this is the only arc to leave like some pretty dangling mysteries at the end of it.
yeah, and man, did we get mysteries? So I'm excited to pursue them.
Yeah.
I guess only other real thing that I took a note on was initially whenever Nami realizes this Gigastorm is coming, she grabs Usopp. She's like, "We got to go back to the boat." And Usopp, so Nami's like, "We have to go back to the boat," and she's stressing it. She's like, "No, we're going. Like, we're just not even going to worry about what's going on in the square." And Usopp is like, "No, we have to go back. Luffy's there. They're going to hurt him." And Nami is like, "What could we even do about it?" And it's interesting because I feel like before Arlong Park, Usopp would have either been like, "Yeah, okay, let's go to the boat," or he would have been the one being like, "What could we even do about it?" But after this growth we had with Usopp, he's like, "No, I'm the kind of guy who will stick his neck out for my boys. Okay, I will jump into the battle, Okay, I'm
At
not
a safe distance.
at a safe distance.
He's a ranged DPS. That's what he does.
So I don't know. I thought that was a fun little moment, and it only took like 3 panels for Oda to do it. So why
God,
not?
it blows my mind that a certain character is designed this arc, Willer, considering that like his interaction with Usopp would kind of be fitting.
Uh,
Next one.
I wish I could help you out, Willer. I don't know. I don't know
Willer's
who
the next one.
Huh?
It's the
I don't
next
know.
one.
It's the next one?
Yeah, because I feel like him and Usopp are kind of in the same power level headwise, and so tend to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, you'll have to.
Yeah,
You'll
well,
have
I'll
to
explain
text
later
me.
when that person joins
Just
the crew.
PM me right now. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, the next. Why the fuck would he? Whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're talking
I
about.
want to talk about one last point.
Okay.
And
Scary
it's,
babies.
it's the barrel kick. The oath. The barrel oath is a really
Yeah.
fun
Oh
scene
yes.
in chapter 100. where
They all
they
have their
put their-
turns.
Yep, they have their turns speaking out their dreams, and they put their feet on the barrel. It's part of being a crew in One Piece. There's a whole theme to what does a crew really mean.
Nakama.
What is a nakama, as they yell in Japanese. And I feel like the big point of a crew is people that choose to be with each other and share their dreams with one another, and they trust each other, and they're all willing to achieve their goals together, which is a really beautiful way to look at a group of people. And I feel like this is a reaffirmation of their bond as a crew before they enter the first big obstacle of their career as pirates. So I really like that moment.
And yeah, it was just kind of a like them saying that and then like being like, let's go to the Grand Line was just like someone waving like a race flag, like, hey, One Piece is starting now.
Yeah.
I feel like at the end of every single arc we're gonna be like, hey, One Piece officially started, but
No, that joke ends here because it's real.
okay. So
There
yeah.
was a reason why when I was thinking about before I started reading One Piece, I was thinking about watching the anime that I essentially started right after this arc because this is when it really kind of really kicks off in its adventure.
Yeah. Well, man, at
This
this
is basically just a one shot of One Piece.
yeah. Well, at this point, I'm on chapter 101, a little over 10% of the way through, so steady progress, I
What's
guess.
101 called?
I can't remember. 100 was the legend something. I already forgot. That also.
Begin.
It's probably Reverse Mountain. Or
Yeah,
no,
Oh yeah,
it's-
that was it. That was it.
Yep.
Oh man, and the cover page introduces a great character that you don't get to know until later.
Yeah, I don't think I looked
Ooh,
at the cover
what?
page yet, so we'll see.
What are you talking about?
On the cover they have the guy with the dog on his head.
Well, holy shit! That early, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Man,
man, that character is Joe.
what?
Joe, that character is just you.
I'm not
It
okay.
reminds me of you. I'm really Bradley. What was your score for this arc for me and Joe's tally?
This is important.
I'll give this one. Coming after Arlong Park, it makes this hard. I'll give it a 3 out of 5, which I'll remind everybody is not like saying, "Hey, this is bad." Like 3 out of 5 is technically more than
Good.
half,
Yeah.
than 2 out of 5.
It's great.
Average
like-
to good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
Pretty good because
it is
that
average
makes
to
the
good.
point.
Just no, Bradley scoring things 4s and 5s is a big deal. So
Yeah.
just keep that in mind.
It's just like this arc is a lot. It's okay. I guess I'd explain it by saying this arc is a lot more of an exposition and world building arc than it is the godlike character building arc that we had previously.
Man, I'm really positive for the next few arcs. I'm very worried about my race score.
I'm pretty positive for the entire future of One Piece.
Dude, I am super interested of what you'll think of the next arc because I think me and Joe have some pretty different guesses for Rouge Town. I'd agree with you. I'd probably give it like a 3.5. Part of it comes from knowing things later,
Yeah.
You can look at the arc retroactively, and it raises your score. It's one of those.
There you go.
I think that one and the one following for sure. The one following.
God, the one following it, it raises the score by quite a bit.
Yeah.
You start crying.
Yeah. Ooh, can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, that is
One Piece.
One Piece.
Yeah.
We only went a little bit shorter. What
That's
do you
the
know?
name of the treasure.
Shorter?
A little bit shorter than last time.
Okay.
Shorter than last time, but not shorter than I thought we would go.
Yeah. Yeah. What was
We have a good time.
I think so, Bradley. I think the next arc is pretty short too, comparatively.
I think
That's fine.
if you were resolved, you could do it by next
You can
roundabout.
The
Yeah,
problem
you
is we just did
oh, you
like
can
40
definitely knock
minutes
that
on
one straight
one
out.
volume, so we're always going to have a lot of stuff to say.
There's a lot to say on this one. There's less to say in the next one at the time, for sure.
What we need to do is, and this is later, but when Bradley gets to the time skip, we need to have a One Piece Part 1 Bradley overview.
Yeah.
Phantom Blood overview.
A retrospective.
Yeah.
Or
Some notes.
writing up notes. Also, Bradley, I just want to say whenever we talk about an arc, I literally bring out my iPad and start like flipping through the chapter pages.
Yeah, I figured you were because every once in a while you'd be like, "Oh wait, here's this thing right here." Like,
That's
there's-
an excellent idea. I should do that.
Yeah, because it helps me like remember that arc, and then like I get to see what you're talking about, and it lets me like point out any other small things.
yeah, I need to do that also.
That's
There's
really good.
there's a joke that Willer. I went back and I've been like kind of hopping around Whole Cake Island
Uh-huh.
arc, and I went back and read the chapter, where they execute their plan,
Uh-huh.
and I forgot the great joke at the end of that where somebody smashes something.
It so fucking funny while he's
It's
staring the
so
person in the
good.
face.
So good.
Oh my god. Okay, alright.
It's such an important beat in that story too.
And he's just doing I'm remembering it better now because he's also wearing the costume.
Yeah, he has a balloon head.
Oh my god. Okay.
Bradley,
I can't wait.
I feel like Whole Cake Island is one of those controversial things, but I loved it so much. Like
Hulking out.
It's not even that controversial. It's the usual like fatigue while you're reading it and then you reread it. It's like, oh my god.
That's
Yeah.
that's the thing. Is there controversial stuff in One Piece? Because I feel like everything's just really good.
There's arcs where people are like, yeah, I don't care much for it.
yeah, there's one that's right after.
The most controversial is like you're after you've been past like Don Krieg and Kuro, which are some of the commonly cited worst arcs. So
And you
There you
can
go.
like sign those off to like the infancy of One Piece.
yeah.
But I think in the later lines, there's only like one arc that's kind of like what's happening, but there are some very strong theories as to why that's important. Long Ring Island.
Yeah, Joe really hated that one.
No, that was Tyler.
You did too. You were like, I feel like I'm
I
reading
didn't
a
care for it.
cartoon.
And that mainly has to do with like one segment in the middle of it that was just that like maybe like oh god, we'll get to it later, but like I was just baffled by how like confusing it was.
Anyways,
Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Oh, I just muted myself. 3. Oh no, we've been recording this whole time. This is still the One Piece. And we're actually back now.
Actually,
All right. So next on the docket, I get to annoy these guys because I've been talking a lot about Attack on Titan recently.
yeah. Apparently, it's a. Well, I was about to say it's getting spicy. Apparently, it's been super spicy since like season 2, but it's like it's like ghost pepper levels now.
To catch people up with my thoughts on Attack on Titan, I liked season 1. I had some problems with the character writing, and I didn't like the beginning very much, but I really liked the second half.
Because we had talked about this on the podcast before, did we?
Yeah. We did a segment on me watching up to season 2, which, as you guys would recall, I really loved season 2, especially for the plot and the intensity, and the characters were getting better. And if listeners will recall, and you guys, going into season 3, I was feeling a little bit worried. I was like, man, I really like season 2. The direction this is going, I could see me hating season 3. And as it turns out, season 3 has made Attack on Titan one of my favorite anime of all time. So
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
wrong.
I was gonna say every time an episode has come out this season, you've just gotten like to an entire new level of hype.
Oh yes. Um, at the time of this conversation, we just got the episode called Morning Sun. It is after that big episode, and this was also a big one where they made the decision. I'm going to talk about it later. And I believe there's 4 or 5 more episodes in the season. If there's anything greater than what we just witnessed, I'm going to explode. But let's take it back. Let's take it back to Attack on Titan season 3 part 1. This was a 2-part season because there was a break in the middle. And it actually worked out really well because the first half totally encompassed one arc, which back in the day I was told that this would be the worst arc, and I was kind of worried for it. And let's just get into it. I have some notes here to guide my thoughts. So, in the first half of season 3, the arc that's taking place, it focuses a lot on human versus human conflict and politics.
Yeah.
And usually I'm super into it, but some of the writing beats in Attack on Titan had me worried that this would either get dragged out, it would have like awkward, gloomy moments that were over the top, or it just wouldn't be executed well. It was the only time where I was like, man, I hope they stick with the apocalypse zombie storyline, because that's basically what Titans are. They're just really well executed zombies.
Yeah, it's like, finish with your premise. Don't turn it into a different story.
Right, I was really worried. As it turns out, the boring politics stuff was handled within 4 episodes.
Okay.
Which I was like, oh, great. And it wasn't even that boring. It actually was pretty interesting. They handled it really fast and really well. And in those episodes, we were still getting really good mystery reveals, which is a really big part of this whole half of the season. There's a ton of shit that's explained to you. Pretty much,
like it seems like it's mystery, the show, from all the stuff I hear.
You know how I praise One Piece for its world building and how well Oda has thought of stuff through ahead of time?
It's like we got that same kind of element going on here.
We have an author that is of the same type of artistry, I guess, where he's really thought this shit through. And it doesn't always land as super hard as One Piece, but like the foreshadowing is insane in this show.
So I feel like the show would probably like reward like a rewatch, right?
It rewards paying attention and rewatches for sure, where so many little scenes are building up to stuff, and like so many stuff that's like something's hidden in the opening that makes sense after you get a reveal, like a world building reveal. And it's just really rewarding in that sense. This season is especially morally gray. That is a big theme of the show, and why I think Bradley would really like it. There's just so much moral grayness to every side of the conflict in this show, and this season probably hit it the hardest. Which again can lead to I've complained in the past that I'm super into the show, but it was hard to connect with a lot of the characters because I came to realize it wasn't that the character writing was bad, it's that every once in a while a character will have a dialogue that is just so edgy where it takes you back. It's like, oh, come on. Did you really say that? Did that have to be here? It's like you're trying so hard. I can spoil ahead of time and say the writers matured so much because by the second half of season 3, these characters are downright great, which is crazy for me to say because I was like, I like 4 characters in the show, where by the end of season 3, I'm like, all of these characters are freaking amazing right now.
Yeah, like it sounds like Attack on Titan like gets exclusively better as it goes, and a lot of people already like it from the start.
Right, a lot of people liked it from the start, but I think it was more like the shock value of like you were 1 episode away from like when the plot starts picking up.
Yeah,
and stuff
because
like that.
we talked about Attack on Titan before, and I probably made people hate me. Like I had only watched the first few episodes, and like episode 1, I feel like we were just kind of going for like, oh, ooh, shock value for entertainment, and then like the next 2 episodes, I'm like, oh, so it's just like a high school anime except in the post-apocalypse.
You're totally right, because that's the part of the season I didn't like. Was early on, it's very military high school.
They moved past that.
They do.
So
Yeah.
That's what I'm interested
And
in.
what's funny, Bradley, is that like you talk about high school anime. That arc is like maybe an episode and a half long. Like
Yeah, like Willer said, I was probably one episode away from
Yeah,
like, wait a minute, this
because
anime's fire.
as soon as like they're out of that school, none of that bullshit comes up again. Essentially,
It comes up, but in really satisfying ways, and
Yeah.
but after where you are, Joe. But
yeah, it doesn't like they
When they
don't
s-
end up going to Titan killing college.
they get degrees in Titan killing.
Yeah.
Okay, back to this arc. I think it's called the Resurgence arc or something like that. There's this scene. There's like this amazing moment where Eren realizes, something someone in the past has done, and the implications of that, and it was haunting, dude. That was the moment where Eren went from being a super annoying main protagonist to an actual likable one. And that is something I never thought I'd say, where I like Eren now as a protagonist.
Man, I'm gonna beam that audio clip back in time to Willer.
Oh, I would punch that guy in the face, because I think a lot of people would agree with me. This is actually a pretty common complaint in the fan base, that Eren was just angry man, has to yell, all I care about is killing Titans. And he still has that element to him, but he's so much more self-aware and so much more reflective at this point, where it's like, there's still an annoying core to you, but you're dealing with it in such an interesting way that I no longer dislike you and I like you now. I don't love Eren, but like he's done a lot of great things as a season 3.
And that's another thing that you've talked about that is kind of reassuring me about this anime, because it's kind of like Guts and Berserk, who goes from just I'm angry, I'm gonna kill demons, and like he said, eventually we get to a point where he still has that element, but he also has depth now.
Yes.
So like from hearing you and Tyler talk about season 3 over the past week or two, I think it's firmly placed itself in my to watch list. I'm gonna have to give it that second try.
Good, because I feel like you would really like this show. Could be wrong. I've been wrong before, but I've also been right.
Yeah.
You're right
The
more
big
than
whenever I was trying to read was just like I felt like it was just too slow, and I really did not want to be under that Lost effect where it just kept on adding up.
Mysteries.
Yeah, and you're just like,
Joe, there's so many answers. I think it's because the anime restructures some scenes and stuff, but
I bet because
Jesus Christ.
yeah,
I
because
understand so much about this world.
big thing with One Piece for me is that, and kind of in general, is that it's sometimes hard to figure out like when an author is flying by the seat of his pants and when there's some sort of world building up. Like to me, it's fun to theorize on like One Piece futures because I have confidence in Oda and what he's doing and what he's planned out. Like I know everything he's done is done purposefully. Whereas there are some other series I've watched and people like theorize and like I don't feel like any of these theories matter because they're going like season by season or week by week or whatever.
Well, I feel like there's some merit to that. I feel like that is how some authors leave it. They leave it vague, so you're supposed to fill it in.
Right. It's just.
But I also like when it's blatant, like One
Yeah.
Piece and Attack on Titan, stuff like that. Another point I had was this one's thematic. So this first half of the season, something I really liked about it is that it's really parent focused, where there's so many plot lines about the sins of the father, or carrying on or rejecting your father's will, or confronting your father, where the opening in each season, in season 1 and 2, were really bombastic and like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's kill Titans, we're a cool army of cute anime people, and Titans are scary and we're fucking wrecking them. And this season, in this half of the season, the opening doesn't show a single Titan. It is like this slow, like way less hype, but like thematic appropriate opening where it's just a lot of characters reflecting on their past selves, reflecting on their parental figures. And by the end of the arc, I was really impressed with the theming of it, which is something that is, again, it's showing how this author is progressing. And I haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet. Going through this arc that was okay to talk about the arc that blew my fucking mind. It wasn't even okay. It was like a solid 4 out of 5, but this next arc is like bordering 6. So thematically really cool. There's a character called Historia who's a big part of this arc where I was talking about earlier how some dialogue choices make me roll my eyes, and she has some of those, but overall she's a good character, and I really like the end point that she reaches at this arc. I thought that was perfect. So even though in the beginning, like, she utters the lines, "I'm going to be the worst girl who's ever lived," and I'm like, oh my god,
Oh
shut
boy.
the fuck up.
There's been some middle school girl who watched that, and then the next day she went to school, and she said the exact same line.
There's a
I'm
lot of people who
13.
watch that. Yes, there's a lot of people who watch that. They're like, "Oh my god, I love Historia. She's so fucking cool." And like, I like her too, but like that, just to show you my tastes, those are the kinds of lines where I'm like, "Come on." I think his name is Isaiah, the guy who writes this. It's like that is such an on the nose, weird, like edgy, forceful line. It's like, ugh. But like again, her actual character arc is phenomenal this season, so I do like her.
And
She
that's
was
what
a big
matters.
part of it, and that is what matters. Well, I think
Well,
dialogue's important.
It matters a lot.
Um, still, like, yeah, still the theming with her is very strong. There's this arc has a good way of building tension at the end, where there's a character I was hoping he wouldn't go down a certain path. Um, and he's one of the father figures, and he does, and I was a little disappointed with it, but then the execution of it was great. And then there's another character who is another character's parent, and they have a really weird relationship of how they grew up together and what their relationship adds up to now, and it just ends really somberly. So then the season ends. It ends on a triumphant note, which is really rare for Attack on Titan. And it ends with like this really hopeful beat where it's like, man, they're really making progress in their mission. Their next goal is going to be this huge milestone in the series. Everything is going great, and I get this feeling in my stomach where I'm just like, I've never seen a death flag for an arc. I believe I said those exact words to you guys, where you get this feeling that this next arc is fucking doomed. One Piece has that going on right now, and Joe knows what I'm talking about. Where certain events are just doomed from the get-go, and you just know it, and you're waiting for the shit show. That's how I felt about this arc. And they fucking jump scared me with this, where in episode 12, it's the last episode before the second half of the season starts. And keep in mind, there was a 6-month gap or something in between these. And in the ending credits, they splice in this like horror jump scare where it cuts to the climax of the next arc out of context. And it is such a jarring cut and jump where it really freaked me out as I was watching it at night. I was like, God, I was not expecting this. And it just gets you wondering, like, what the hell's going to happen to lead up to that moment. And I thought it was a really cool decision, because we get to finally talk about this next arc. Holy shit, man. The second arc of season 3 is really strong. It's very action, strategy, and conflict driven. And there's not much I can say about it without really spoiling. There's a lot of themes about human sacrifice, like in a positive way of like, you're going to give your life for the greater good, and it's the best the theming and the writing for that has ever been. The characters mature greatly in this arc. The writing of the conflict is tense, and there's ebbs and flow of, okay, now the good guys have the upper hand, and oh shit, literally the worst thing that could possibly happen. And just a lot of good flow with that, like I said. It just makes you really invested from the get-go. It's just, from episode 1, it's just fire. Like, it just goes, and it's still going. But it's definitely the strongest character season, and I think me and Tyler, rest in peace, Tyler, our special guest, are super into it right now. We really want to see, well, I feel like the climax has happened, but somehow there's more episodes coming up, and these are going to be very big exposition mystery episodes, which are some of the best in the series because the plot is the best part. But now I'm also invested in the characters, and God, there's just so many scenes that I really can't talk about, but there's some fucking crushing deaths. There are some badass action scenes. And there's this decision, this moral dilemma that they set up in the most recent episode, where that episode was a work of art. The episode before it was the hypest shit, where like I think I sent it to you guys earlier today. It is now the most highest rated episode of anything on IMDb.
Shit.
Which is nuts. The rest of the top 5 is like all Game of Thrones episodes, which means the list is invalid because it doesn't have Breaking Bad.
Yeah,
episodes.
all 5 aren't Breaking Bad, which
that's fine. It's still a cool little factoid, even if it doesn't mean anything. But it's the number 1, and for a reason. The episode called Hero is an incredible rise of hype and then gut punch of depression, and it's just done really well. And there's a lot of times where the author tries to go, he struggled with themes, or with tone rather, in the past, where he struggled to go from positive and hype to dark and moody, and I feel like he struck the perfect balance with this arc. So many big characters finally getting the conflict that's been built up. Like, a lot of build up has been to this arc, and it delivered. And again, this moral dilemma was freaking crushing, where both sides were right, and it's like having to choose between, are you going to save Captain America or Tony Stark?
Yeah.
And it's like, one of these is 51% right, and one of these is 49% right. And in my opinion, they went with the right one, both narratively and in the world.
And I imagine the fan base is just like going nuts over it.
It's the moral dilemma is so fucking good that everyone seems to accept it. They're like, man, I don't know if I would have done that, but I'm okay with this. It's really impressive. From what I've seen in the discussion threads, he created this scenario and dilemma where everyone is very accepting and they all understand the reason, and they're all just excited to see what's next.
Picked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I did not hear you.
What the fuck you saying?
He created a situation where regardless of what you picked, you lost. And that always creates a more interesting scenario than whichever one you pick, you kind of win.
Yeah.
Because it's
deeper than that even. Yeah. I don't know.
It's like, what are you willing to lose?
There's so much lost and so much gained. That's never mind.
We'll see. We'll find out when we get there.
I really hope some of you guys can jump on. It's not perfect. I'm totally in love with this arc, but it's always gonna have its moments. Like, there was this one character in this episode who he has so much fucking plot armor where he's escaped certain death like 3 times, and like that gets on your nerve. But then another character that has had similar plot armor, but he finally went down, and you feel bittersweet about that. And there's a character who just showed up out of nowhere for this moral dilemma, but like it worked, but it was like pretty jarring. Yeah, man. It's up there with Hunter x Hunter and JoJo's and Death Note as animes I like. Now, I'm more of a manga boy, so if you factor in the mangas, it might not be top 5 anymore if you do anime plus manga, but it's probably still top 10, even if you factor both. I'm into it. From what I hear, the next arcs are supposed to be even better. So if somehow it keeps getting better, then yeah, it's going to stay there. And if it gets worse, it's not going to drop that much farther, because I've really enjoyed. Now, granted, this is the kind of series where if the ending's really shitty, it could Game of Thrones it. But I'm holding out for hope, because the journey's been really fun. And yeah, that is Attack on Titan. After the season's over, I can do a quickie impression as well. Well, that must have been jarring for anyone who... Because there's just going to be a cut of silence and then Joe doing a dumb Godzilla roar, which is what that was. Me and Joe watched, not together, but we watched Godzilla King of the Monsters. Separately, and I took this time to also watch Godzilla 2014 and Shin Godzilla. This is my first Godzillas. Yeah. Joe, you've seen all 3 of these?
I have seen a good portion of Shin Godzilla. I haven't like found time to sit down and watch it, but I've seen like a majority of it through clips and like other things.
Okay.
I watch like I know all the forms that Godzilla goes through during Shin Godzilla, essentially.
Let's talk about then. We'll go in 2014, King of the Monsters. The
So
order I
I
watched.
want to discuss that. I've basically seen every Godzilla movie.
I am a Godzilla virgin boy, where these were my first, really.
Yeah,
I've only
so-
seen clips in the past.
Pretty much the
Right.
extent of my
Because-
Godzilla experience is the Game Boy Advance game. So
So you got the
my-
canon one.
yeah,
Bradley, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you care if we spoil portions of King of the Monsters?
you know, I want to say no, and then like you guys are gonna talk about the movie and be like, oh my god, I wish you didn't spoil that, but
It's fine.
you know what?
I think you'll be fine.
Yeah.
You're a big boy. You can
Yeah.
take it.
For the sake of
It's-
discussion,
This movie is primarily spectacle than it is like.
I imagine.
It's
and
Shin
not inadvertent.
Godzilla, where spoiling it might be a problem, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
the sake of discussion, say whatever you need to say.
So,
Okay.
Joe, tell us about your Godzilla experience and journey in life.
So, as a wee lad, I have always been in love with giant lizard monsters. This ranges from Reptar from Rugrats to basic dinosaurs. So, our King of the Monsters, Godzilla. I would constantly get into fights with my sister on road trips, whether to watch Godzilla or to watch The Wiggles for the third time in a row.
Fuck
But-
that.
Yeah, but no, I've seen a good portion of the Godzilla movies. Know it. It's been a very long time since I've seen them, but I relatively know a good chunk of lore and like where it comes from and like the relative ideas and originations of the monsters.
See, I know that as well. I've been
Yeah.
watching some videos to get caught up in the... Because, man, I try to watch the original Godzilla. Man, it's not for me. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, no, I agree. The original Godzillas are pretty rough if you're not a 5-year-old child.
Oh, the first one's like really... It's got good themes,
Yeah.
but it's,
So-
just,
so the
it's,
big
so,
thing
it's
here-
too old. And here's the thing. I like old... I respect old movies, but
Uh-huh.
I don't have patience for them, which is
Yeah.
really unfortunate to say, but that's just who I am, and I've come to
So-
accept it.
So the first Godzilla is a great political statement about nuclear weapons and destruction of Japan, and how it's
Post World War II Japan.
post World War II and its effect on the economy and all in its community and so forth, and how that scarred its country.
And
If it
what
ever-
it does is it uses a giant monster in a disaster movie to represent these themes, which is really smart.
Yes, and I think at the time, if I remember correctly, Japan essentially couldn't talk about it. Like there were, I can't remember. There was something going on that they had to try to work
it
around.
was taboo to talk about it.
Yeah. But it's a great kind of political pulling from that time, that history time period, political look of how that country was feeling at the time. And then the next movie after that is Godzilla Raids Again, which introduces the monster v monster shenanigans that happens for the rest of the Godzilla movies, basically.
Also, the timeline of these movies is so goddamn complex. Where you have all these sequels, and then you have a
Here's the
2000.
thing, they happen in eras, but movies that happens in certain eras doesn't mean that those movies are canonically are not canon to each other at all.
Well, there's also the fact that the second era ignores every movie except for the first movie, and then every single movie in that era is a reboot sequel to the first movie. It's nuts.
That's what I'm saying, is that every single movie is essentially its own movie.
But then you have a
with
third
these
era where there are some sequels. It's really crazy.
Yeah, so the best way to approach Godzilla is you see a Godzilla movie on the shelf and you just watch it, and you don't care what the plot is, and well, you kind of care, but you don't worry about anything that happened beforehand or what happens after, because they're pretty self-contained in what's going on. They reference the previous things, but they're really kind of have their own lores within the videos 90% of the time.
Now, with that out of the way, let's jump to the ones I have seen.
Yes.
Which is, okay, let's talk about Godzilla 2014.
Okay.
I've long heard about some hype and disappointment with this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out I kind of fell into the general consensus, I feel like. Taking it back, as I do, I took notes. There's some really good actors in this movie.
Yeah.
Bryan Cranston is fucking great in this.
Mm-hmm.
Bryan Cranston.
And that's not a surprise, I guess, but my god, that guy can emote.
I love
So
him.
to bring it back, Godzilla 2014 may, if Godzilla 2014 would have been the best Godzilla movie if Bryan Cranston was in the entirety of that movie.
Yep.
Because his character plot arc is his character arc is so good.
And his acting is so compelling.
It is. It's such a great character. It's so down to earth. And it reflects perfectly on what the idea of the of going back to like a nuclear explosion and like dealing with the aftermath of that and not being in control of the situation. Like he's a perfect personification of that character.
To do a Godzilla movie where you are focused on specific characters, I feel like focusing on Bryan Cranston's character was their ticket. That's how they could have done it, and they fucking didn't. Joe, they didn't do it.
I know, it blew my mind.
I cannot believe.
I think part of that was because at the time when 2014 came out, where was Breaking Bad? Was it just finished?
Breaking Bad was just finishing, I think.
Yeah. So Bryan Cranston was probably at the height of his career. They could only get him for a few scenes, and so they worked him in. But they accidentally gave him literally the best character in any Godzilla
movie. And he outacted everyone. Elizabeth Olsen, who is Scarlet Witch, she did really good as well. But I mean, come on. Bradley, we're just gonna say it. They kill Bryan Cranston off 40 minutes in this movie. It's like,
look how they massacred my boy.
My God! And they set up this really compelling arc where he has a son, and his son's
a bomb defusal expert. Like he went to Afghanistan and
became a bomb boy
using bombs.
Yeah, that's weird. Like it's not uncommon to kill a big character at the beginning or end of the movie, but like pretty much exactly halfway is.
No, it's a little or before that. But what happens is you kill off your best character and you leave his less interesting son to carry the weight of the movie.
Ooh.
So Bradley, to even back it up even more, the Bryan Cranston's motivation is he's living in Japan and he's like the general manager,
engineer, I believe.
Yeah, the lead engineer at this
nuclear
power plant. So he goes to work one day, and his wife is also an engineer too, and they both work at this power plant. So they go into the nuclear power plant one day, and they get this weird readings. They're like, "What the hell's going on?" Blah 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 blah. And the wife goes down, and when they're down there, there's a containment breach, and so they have to like shut the whole thing down. They have to stop it from like exploding. And
before that, they sent a team down there to explore it, and that team included the wife.
Yeah, and the wife like barely misses getting out of like the hazardous zone of the nuclear reactor. And to put it on top of that, that makes it worse, is that Bryan Cranston has to be the person that pushes the button to stop his wife from getting to safety.
Yep. So he has this guilt of like he couldn't save his wife, and she dies.
Yeah, she dies from the radioactivity, and then as he's leaving the power station, he hears like this weird sound, and he's like, something's wrong. Something is not normal. And he spends the rest of his life trying to figure out what went wrong with this power station. And then
this island becomes quarantined, and as an adult, he's there every day doing research. He's getting weird echolocation readings from the island. He sneaks into the island and gets caught, and he sneaks back in. And it turns out the zone is not contaminated at all, and there's a company called Monarch.
It's not a company, it's a global secret agency called Monarch.
And they're doing business there, and they find him and his son because they went in together. And that's when the first monster, which is an hour, it's like 30 or 40 minutes in, the first Muto, which is the name of the monsters in this movie, wakes up. He goes on a rampage. It's pretty all right. Bryan Cranston dies. The reason why we had to bring up the plot is like that's a pretty good setup, and that's
great motivation for this character, because it's like the idea in these movies is that each of these monsters are kind of like a representation of some sort of natural disaster. And so the fact that like Bryan Cranston has to deal with the fact that he couldn't prevent this disaster from killing his wife and is obsessed with it. It's such a great motivation for him to follow the plotline of these monsters, and then they just kill him.
And it takes moving on from that point on, it takes an hour into the movie to get Godzilla, but it's good because like he's well set up. Like by the time you get him, it's a big deal. But like my God, that's a lot when you're waiting for the title boy to show up. And after that scene with Godzilla, this movie hits such a boring patch. Like,
Yeah.
there's like a 20-30 minute patch after the scene where this movie crawls.
I agree. I will say though, Willer, I didn't have that much of a problem with the hour-long build-up for Godzilla because essentially you're number one, like for the majority of that, you're following Bryan Cranston, and he's a very compelling character, and
Right.
he's great. And then when he does show up, and you have this great thing where like he rises from the ocean, and like the water displacement causes flooding in Hawaii, and then uh, you're just like everyone's like, "What the hell's happening? What the hell's happening?" And he just shows up, and you just see essentially one of my favorite shots of this whole movie is that the Muto's attacking, it's causing chaos, and you get the interior shot of this airport, and it's panning from like left to right.
Oh,
and,
that is great.
And as it pans, you like everything's exploding, people are panicking and running around, and then all of a sudden you see Godzilla's foot just step in the frame, and everything just falls silent. Everybody just stops running around and just like is in awe of this like Titan.
In
just,
awe of the lad.
Yeah. And just coming up, and you get like Godzilla's roar for the first time in the theater, and you see his like whole like face and body. It's a great reveal.
It is,
then,
which is why it's a minor complaint, but it is still like an hour, so it's worth noting. Yeah, there's that boring section. There's this good scene where they're on a bridge and they're hiding from a Muto. That was pretty okay. Aside from that, the army in this movie is super unengaging. Like, they have no real strategy. There's no politics or anything interesting with how they fight Godzilla. They're just throwing shit at them. Not fight Godzilla, but the Mutos.
They feel pointless, and like
They're
the
so
big thing, the
pointless.
reason why in other Godzilla movies it never focuses on military. It focuses on the scientists, because a big part of the themes in Godzilla is like how do we outthink nature? How do we like use our big old brains that we've developed to like save ourselves and like prevent this from happening and repair the damage that has been done. Like, how do we understand what is happening to us?
Yeah, and the army stuff was never interesting, and it's a big chunk, and they cut out from the action a lot to focus on the plot line of the son and his wife, and it's just like, this is a good disaster movie. The Mutos are pretty cool bad guys. So it's a good disaster movie, but like it did not need that much human interaction, and it wasn't good human interaction in the second half. So it really hurt it.
Like if it was Bryan Cranston talking about like radioactivity physics, trying to track them, trying to like see their movements.
Oh
and, like,
man, that would have been much better.
Great. It's so much better, and then you have some sort of, and you also have more motivation as to why why we're following this monster, is because we're following Bryan Cranston's like road to redemption, essentially. He's trying to avenge his fallen wife who died because of this monster blowing up the.
Joe, you would have brought this movie score up a lot more if you were in that writing room.
Yeah.
So some closing thoughts I have for this Godzilla film, so we can move on to the other two, is that the action itself was okay. I was whelmed by it. I like this. I like how it's 2 versus 1, and the Mutos have interesting designs. I like when Godzilla tail whips one into a building, and I really like the final kill on the last one before he shoots an atomic breath into its throat and melts its face off, and then he slithers back into the ocean. And the world is like, what the hell was that thing? And that I like, but it's pretty whelming big monster action. I feel like I was spoiled by Pacific Rim's choreography in its fights, where it doesn't quite have that here.
I will say that I've always been a fan of like when monsters fight. I always like the more big, bulkier, slow movements that they had. That's why I like the fights in this movie. I will say, like, so there's one of my other favorite shots in this movie is the scene where Godzilla does his atomic breath for the first time. Which essentially was, for a long time when this movie was coming out, my friend and I were like, because throughout the entirety of the marketing, not once did they show him using.
Right. I remember that. I remember people talking about that as well.
Yeah, and like because in the previous movie that America did, they didn't use it at all. And so my friend are like, well, if they're gonna use it, they have to use it, because that's like a huge like
It is a big part of his moveset.
Yeah, it's a huge part of his moveset.
He can
It's
use
like
it to
the most
propel his
iconic
body.
move.
Have you seen that clip of where he uses it to rocket his body in one of the cheesier movies?
Mm-hmm.
So good.
But the way they set that up, and like they know, and like the director knew you're waiting for this moment to happen, and so when like the Muto is like has his back turned, and you just see like, oh, I remember what the shot is now. You have the shot down where you're at the sun. He's about to get eaten by the Muto, and then you just see this blue light show off screen, and you just see him power up his spine. He shoots it out, and you're like, oh my god.
Really cool. I really like how he charges it.
It was a great nerd moment for me in the theater because I was just so excited that he did that.
So for me, Godzilla 2014 ends up being. I'll be generous and give it a 3 out of 5. For me.
I would say I would give it a 3 out of 5 as well. The big portion of this, because I've tried watching it before, is once Bryan Cranston leaves and that airport scene ends, there's a huge 20-minute or 30-minute even chunk of boring.
Really bad.
It's
hard for something to stick out for me that badly.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about next, Willard?
Next, we're going to talk about the movie I watched after this one, which was I watched all 3 of these movies on one day. I was like, you know what? I'm going to get acquainted with modern Godzilla today. Mm-hmm. So I watched King of the Monsters.
Yeah.
Which is the most recent Godzilla film. By Legendary. It is the sequel to this one.
5 years after? Yeah, 5 years after.
This movie has 3 monsters for Godzilla to either fight or ally with. It's got Rodan, it's got Mothra, and it's got King Ghidorah. All who I know by name and design, but they all look really cool in this one, and they all play really cool roles. So, I thought this movie was retroactively, just to show my cards, I thought the plot of this movie was good. I was like, you know what? This is the kind of plot that's probably the best a Godzilla movie can offer, because I only saw them as big dumb action movies that also had a political nuclear message, and I was like, yeah, I guess this is a good plot. No. Retroactively, after watching Shin Godzilla, this plot is bad, and I dare say it's even more intrusive than the plot in 2014, because the 2014 plot had Bryan Cranston at least.
Not counting the Bryan Cranston plot, because the Bryan Cranston plot is the biggest missed potential.
There is so much from this movie where they cut away from action
to
get to this plot that is not that good, especially in the climax of the movie. They cut back to the family so goddamn often. So the setup of this movie, Bradley, just to give you a quick summary,
let me hear it,
is that a mom and a dad. So when Godzilla attacks, a mom and a dad lose their son, and only their daughter survives.
From the previous movie's climactic battle.
Okay.
Yeah. And they decide to build this machine that can communicate and kind of control titans, as they're called, the big monster kaijus. And they make it, and then the dad and the mom divorce. The dad becomes an alcoholic. The mom becomes something very interesting.
She becomes Godzilla too.
She becomes a crazy woman, and she gets in this plot where she gets eco-terrorists to kidnap her, so she has an out to use this machine to wake up all the monsters in the world. She has a speech in the middle of the movie where, I shit you not, she's on Skype, she's explaining her motivations, and I'm like, this is a dumb motivation, but I guess this is good for a Godzilla movie, where her idea is to wake up all the monsters so that they can cleanse out the world, so that the natural order can be restored, because they were here before humans.
There's a moment earlier in the film where they talk about every time a monster goes someplace and kind of levels it, plant life and not normal, but essentially life flourishes in that area.
Yeah.
They have a natural ability to just spread life around wherever they go.
I think radiation would do the opposite, but maybe this is a specifically used radiation, whatever.
I think it's just more of a life-giving kind of cycle thing. Who gives a shit? We got giant.
I believe they blame it on the radiation, but anyways, so she has this villain speech in the middle of the movie where on a Skype call she has clips of disasters ready for the viewing. It's really dumb.
And you didn't realize how dumb that was until after I mentioned it.
Yeah, I thought about it more. I was like, I realized it as I was watching it, but then I thought about it more, and I was like, Joe really disliked that part, and you know what? I think I do too.
Yeah.
And then they have a daughter who's Millie Bobby Brown, who's 11, who's a great actress in this movie, but she doesn't get to do much. She's just like a plot device.
I wish she was in it more. I wish she was kind of like a more pivotal role.
The marketing made it seem like she could control monsters or communicate with them.
Yeah.
I was expecting that. But anyways, that plot drags on. So let's talk about...
Here's the thing about that, is I feel like that plot doesn't drag on as much as in Godzilla 2014, because I feel like there's substantial motivation and there's enough of us following them around to follow the monsters. That there's
the mom and the dad characters are so bad. The dad
they're awful.
such an
asshole. I agree. They're so bad.
The dad is either whispering or yelling at people, and he's a good actor as well, but like he was not good in this role, and the writing for him was not good.
There's a point when they're in a. I should also mention that I actually enjoyed this movie. Like I had a good time watching it.
I did too. It's just that this plot was a big part of it, and it was the big negative.
Yeah. There's a point where they're sitting in this room and the dad just starts like going on this fucking rant about killing all the monsters, and you're just like, I get it, but this is a bit too ham-fisted of a foil motivation to the mother.
You sound like season 1 Eren from Attack on Titan right
now,
which is not a good place to be.
But so and what's terrible is that what's funny is the monster plot is actually really cool.
The monster plot is excellent.
It's so good.
See, and this gets... So, let's talk about... So, God, dude, So, again, the choreography is not a Pacific Rim level, but the visuals in this movie are fucking insane. I loved what they did for the visuals. There's so much character to the lighting and the filming style of each monster. Where
there was great cinematography in this movie. Like... I think there were some incredible shots done, and like the way that lighting, because we have like there's a constant motif of like 3 lighting patterns where we have a blue, we have a red, and we have a yellow, and they're cycled through constantly.
And then Mothra is like white.
It's
green?
Like she's like a white or like green? A lightish blue kind of deal,
something like that.
Yeah, but like they represent like the big 3 monsters. They represent Ghidorah, Godzilla, and Rodan.
So Ghidorah lands on this planet, and it turns out he's an alien. So he's fucking up the ecosystem, and he's such an alpha that every other Titan that was awoken in the planet has to listen to his will, which leaves Godzilla and best girl Mothra to save the day. And Godzilla dies midway through the movie.
Well, he doesn't die. He essentially gets...
He basically dies, and he gets revived with a nuke in this kind of touching scene with Ken Watanabe. And then... That shot of him coming out with the water and shooting the atomic breath in the air looked stellar.
So I want to talk about there are so many. This movie has so many callbacks to previous, to original era movies, and
I have a feeling I know one of them. It's when the Asian girl is talking about her lineage and her family, and you see all these characters where I'm like, these are old Godzilla characters.
So the lore for Mothra is that there's essentially twins that have to like safeguard the larva eggs that appear after Mothra dies, and they harbor her like resurrection essentially.
I see.
So like they're always there to make sure that she comes back to life and she's okay and she knows what to do when she comes back. They're essentially like the liaisons between Mothra and the human population. So that's number 1 that I really liked. Number 2 was... There's a point in the movie where Godzilla and Ghidorah are fighting in the middle of the ocean, which was a sweet move pulled by Godzilla, I thought, to just like get him while he's so close to his own territory.
Yeah.
And the army sends out an oxygen destroyer, which was the original weapon used in the original Godzilla to kill Godzilla.
No, wait, I have lore for you. That's not how I went. That's what it was used to kill King Ghidorah.
No, that's what it was used to kill Godzilla.
No, because that weapon was used to create Destroya, which that kills Godzilla.
Right.
I watched a video over this.
Hold on. I'm pretty sure, like in the original Godzilla, they kill him for an oxygen something. It's an oxygen bomb or oxygen destroyer.
From what I understand, that movie was about the theme of should we use this weapon or not, and I think they didn't.
No, they do, because Shirozawa... That comes to another point.
Clearly, I don't know what I'm talking about, as I
Yes, it's
admitted
the
to not
Oxygen
have watched.
Destroyer. So this is
Okay.
what happens. So in the original movie, there is a character called Dr. Shirazawa that that develops this device and goes down and sacrifices himself to destroy Godzilla.
Which is a flip of what Ken
What happens
Watanabe's
in this
character
movie.
does.
Yeah. So it's a good kind of like foil reflection between the two movies, which is another point. I was like, that's a great kind of just like, oh look, we're kind of like, I like circular patterns like that because
Yeah,
I'm
that's
terrible,
nice.
terrible. But it was a good flip and callback to the original movie, I thought.
Even I can appreciate that as like not a longtime fan. I'm like, you know what? I like that.
But you are right that it does create Destroya. Like that becomes a plot line to create another monster.
+1 for me. Godzilla's only died once, I think.
Yeah, the original Godzilla is so every Godzilla movie that happens after the first one is essentially the son of the original Godzilla,
Mm.
and then there are other sons of Godzilla later. But essentially, yeah, that's what that Godzilla is.
But I'm pretty sure he dies in the Destroyer one because I read it was a big deal because the U.S. like didn't care about Godzilla, but they're marketing this one as Godzilla dies in this one. It's like, oh
Yeah, no,
that's
he does, and that's a throw. So the end of this movie, if we're going spoilers, Bradley, just so you know. So at the end,
I'll be okay.
yeah,
you'll live.
yeah.
Bradley's been able to tell, you know what, this is it for me.
So yeah, so they detonate the nuclear device in Godzilla's little home turf area, which is a big like radioactive like
Atlantis.
yeah, it's Atlantis, and it's got this huge radioactive deposit in it as well. So when they detonate that, not only do they revive him, they also supercharge him, and they unlock his final form, which is burning Godzilla. That's a throwback.
Super Saiyan Godzilla.
Yeah, and that happens in the Destroya movie where Godzilla goes burning Godzilla and kills him in Destroya.
Oh yeah.
And then revives his own son, who becomes Godzilla later.
Yeah, his son looks goofy in those old movies, huh?
Yeah,
It's pretty bad, but
but the thing too about the monsters is that the monsters have more personality and depth to them than the human.
King Ghidorah's 3 heads argue like triplets. I really like that. He has his yellow colored lightning. I think that was his color scheme.
Mm-hmm.
The scene where there's this scene where he bites down on a power plant and then shoots a wave of lightning into the air to destroy all these jets. That scene looked fantastic.
Yeah, and Godzilla's like, "What the fuck is happening?"
He's really imposing, really good villain. He kicks Godzilla's ass the first time they fight.
And you're just, it's so weird that they're able to like both like maintain a kind of animalistic side to these monsters, but have some sort of personality tied to them as well.
I want to talk about
like,
Rodan because we haven't talked about him yet.
Starscream?
He's Starscream. I was just gonna say it. He's such a little shit face. I really like Rodan in this movie. The scene where he wakes up in the volcano looks great. I really like. So each one has an element too, where Godzilla has atomic, Ghidorah has lightning, Rodan has heat and fire, but he doesn't breathe fire, which I expected him to. Instead, his wings are so hot that the way they represent this is when he flies over a city, he's flying with so much intensity and speed that it destroys the city just from him flying above it. I thought that was really cool. And one of my favorite action scenes, maybe the best one in the movie, is when he's chasing down all the jets.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of like flipping and using his wings and his heat to explode every jet that comes close to him as he's closing down on the plot armor jet. I thought that was rad.
Infinite fuel.
Yeah, infinite fuel plot armor jet.
Yeah.
Really like that. I liked how in the end he bows down to Godzilla because he's Starscream.
I like that Ghidorah like was a hurricane. That was a sweet like kind of.
As he moves, he creates a storm, and as he's fighting, the whole weather around him turns into a storm, which is really cool. Mothra, oh man, she's my favorite. She looks so beautiful. She looks so badass in that shot where she's diving down on Rodan, and she's
great shot. It makes her look awesome.
I like her surprise stinger to quote unquote kill Rodan, but he's fine.
Knock him out, and then Death revives.
The scene where she awakens is probably the most beautiful shot in the movie, from her cocoon. And then her sacrifice for Godzilla made me real sad. I wanted more of Best Girl.
I feel like a big portion of this movie is that they didn't have enough confidence in like the gravitas of their monsters. But like I feel like what they've done with them makes them like because there's a point where like Godzilla comes up and you have like these front shots of Godzilla and he has like you just want to see more of him and you really root for him. I feel.
Yeah. To add on to that, like as the fighting's happening, they have to cut back to Millie Bobby Brown and the family struggling so often. It's like they don't have confidence that we want to see the monster fighting. They're like, hey, don't forget the humans are on the ground, they're in danger, so you should care about the scene because they're in danger. They didn't have confidence that I cared about the scene because I like Godzilla. He's a cool ass dude.
They don't have confidence that Godzilla could like be a protagonist, which is really sad.
And one thing I really like about Godzilla, which I was learning as I watched these first two movies, was like he's very neutral. Where like in his first movie, he's undoubtedly a good guy, I guess, in comparison to the Muto. But as he's fighting, he's killing people and destroying cities.
Yeah, he doesn't care that he's causing destruction. He's just
a force of nature. With some personality, which I like.
And then later, this movie, we're kind of revealed that he has some sort of relationship with humankind, but it's not necessarily one of, I don't know, like full.
It's not mutualistic for both sides, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it is because he cleans up the big monsters, but he's also destroying lives, so it's a price to pay to keep the world in balance.
He's essentially like don't build a giant fucking robot and overthrow me, essentially.
So, my closing thought, because I really wanted to talk about Shin Godzilla, and we're 30 minutes in.
Yeah. Go ahead.
My closing thought for King of the Monsters is that first I would have given it a 4. I would now reduce it to a 3.5 because of Shin, which means I still liked it. I just really thought the human plot hurt this one even worse because I thought the action was even more compelling and the filming and the cinematography and the shots were so cool that I was really hungry for more.
Yeah, I agree. A 3.5. I think what would bump this up to a 4 with me is that there's a point where Millie Bobby Brown is in the Boston Stadium and they go into them and there's a whole fucking thing trying to find her. If they showed up, picked her up, and then left, and we're just like, we can't do anything else, and the rest of the movie was them fighting, I would be like, perfect. That's all you needed.
That would have bumped this movie. Because here's what I'm thinking. After watching Shin Godzilla, I realized something. It is that America doesn't have confidence to do a real plot in a Godzilla movie.
That's progressed by Godzilla.
They don't have the sense for what Godzilla means to the Japanese people in that first movie in Shin, where he's supposed to really mean something, and they're just like, well, we get it. He's a nuclear deterrent. He's a problem with nuclear. We're gonna make a plot around that, and we're gonna really create characters, and you're gonna like about these characters, and we're gonna make sure you like these characters. Otherwise, you're not gonna like Godzilla because we don't have faith. I feel like they should double down in what they do best, which is amazing special effects and big monster dumb fights.
And the thing is, too, is my also personal opinion is that it's harder to come up with a good
grounded plot,
when you have multiple monsters on screen. Because we have one monster there and it's just causing chaos. It like in Shin Godzilla. It becomes a really good metaphor for an environmental disaster, nuclear testing.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about
something. Yeah, and like you can really understand the human struggle with like, oh man, how do we stop this like thing we can't control? When you introduce another monster that Godzilla has to fight, like we don't have anything that relates for us to relate to essentially on that pattern.
So, I just feel like the Hollywood movies do the action so well that they should just double down and make it a dumb Pacific Rim monster fight movie.
You should watch Kong Skull Island.
Okay, good.
Because I really, really like Kong Skull Island. It knew that its human element was just kind of there to have some characters in there, but I think they really did a great job of balancing out the two.
So to talk about the other side of Godzilla, the thematic side. So I'm saying America should keep the dumb fight. And I'm saying Japan killed it with the thematic side because I fucking loved Shin Godzilla, and the more I think about it, the more I love it. So This one, I got some notes. Joe, you didn't get to watch this one all the way through, so pitch in the parts where like, oh yeah, I did see that, or yeah. So off the bat, this movie starts with Godzilla just rising from the ocean. There's this boat that's in the middle of the ocean, and then all of a sudden Godzilla rises, and he looks fucking terrifying. Let me find a picture of Phase 1 Godzilla to post in the chat.
Mm-hmm. Do you mean the tentacle or the?
I mean the dumb-looking fucker.
Oh yeah,
in the
that thing is
beginning of this
horrifying.
movie. Yes, he is horrifying because he looks so unnatural, and he moves in a way that like a creature should not move. And
I think that's second form Godzilla, because most first forms is when you see that tentacle shoot up in the beginning.
okay, so maybe that was, they do say Form 4 at the end. But look at this dumb fucker with his gross gills and his big fish eye. And
Yeah.
this is a big theme of this movie, is Godzilla is a force of nature that evolves very effectively. So this thing washes up on shore, and what this movie does is that it does not have a central character. It has a main character who is, I believe his name is Yamaguchi. He's whatever. The real character of this movie is the Japanese government and people. It is Japan and Godzilla, and those are the two characters. And because of that, because it's not focused on an individual character, it's not focused on making Millie Bobby Brown and her parents interesting, it's not focused on Bryan Cranston and his son, it's focused on the people versus Godzilla. They're able to create this...
The people versus Godzilla. Judicial court.
Judicial court. It's able to create this Phoenix Wright trial where it's able to create this story where it really says something and is really focused, where this movie just fucking starts and it goes and it goes and it goes, where Godzilla resurfaces, Japan doesn't know what they're looking at. This is a creature who just surfaced out of the water and can't even walk, so he's waddling through the city, destroying everything by accident. The CG is not as great for this movie as the American ones, but it also makes them look so disturbing.
Yeah,
and
they use a lot of the stuff they use is like practical effects, like they use miniatures.
They use miniatures to destroy the buildings and stuff, and to show floods of Godzilla moving, which I really like. They use a lot of practical effects, and just the cinematography of this movie. This movie was directed by I'm gonna butcher his name, but I think it's Hideaki Anno, the guy who made Neon Genesis Evangelion. He wrote and directed the anime and the movies, and it's got a lot of his style where like the shots are really interesting, and he makes mundane situations look fun and just look interesting. And a lot of people call this movie Godzilla versus the red tape, because a lot of this movie is bureaucracy, and a big theme of it is how Japan's bureaucracy slows down its ability to deal with big threats that they're not prepared for. So
I think, and this movie came out after the whole tsunami and everything.
After the tsunami that hit in was it 2015?
And
it was a critique of how badly the Japan government handled this, which is such a good evolution of Godzilla, because the first Godzilla movie is about something. It's about a historical event, which is the dropping of the A-bombs. And this one's about the government and its inability to handle big threats. And it uses this disaster movie, this monster, to represent it. So early on in the movie, the government can't do shit. They're completely fumbling. They have to do 7 meetings just to fire 1 missile at Godzilla. Like, there's this scene where they're attacking Godzilla, and it's after he's evolved into a second phase. Now he's standing upright, and he's got arms.
Tiny arms.
Baby arms. And they're like, oh, let's fight him. And then they see a civilian in the streets, and they're like, Prime Minister, can we shoot him? And he has to go through a chain of like 3 people to give the command to shoot or not to shoot. And what I like about this movie, it's critiquing the government, but it's not anti-government. Like, everyone is trying their best. It's just the system is not allowing them to do it.
Yeah, the system is
flawed.
It's worsening the situation rather than relieving the situation, essentially.
And its solution to fix it is, after some crushing defeats to Godzilla, after he's fully evolved into his final form, which looks fucking terrifying. It's my favorite design. Well, the final form in the movie is the one that you see for most of the movie.
Right. There's that's the fourth form. There's a fifth form after
There's
that.
a fifth form, which I'm definitely going to talk about.
Yeah.
But so after some defeats, they put this newer guy in charge, and he's like, it's not going to be the old government that's going to do this. I'm going to get this group of losers and misfits and people who are really good at their field, but they don't fit into these organizations and governments.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I'm going to put them all together, and we're going to focus on how can we outsmart nature, just like Joe said earlier. How can we defeat Godzilla? So they do a bunch of research. There's this incredible scene where you were talking about how the military shouldn't be involved. There's a scene of the military going on an all-out assault, and it's so well done, where it's like they throw everything at Godzilla, and it's not just random firing. They have a strike pattern. They have strategy involved, and no matter what they do, they cannot scratch Godzilla, and it really shows just how powerful he is.
Mm-hmm.
So this movie is really plot heavy. Godzilla is only in this movie for like 4 scenes, but they make him fucking count, because when he's in the scene, he's the focus. It's not cutting back. It's cutting back to the government fumbling around, because that's the point, but it's not really cutting back that much from him doing his shit.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of this movie, there's this scene where now the whole world's getting involved, and the U.S. is like, you know what, we're gonna help you. And this movie also touches on the U.S. and Japan's relationships, how the Japan's kind of under the thumb of the U.S., even though they're not like really, but like they need them still, because there's some healthy points to the relationship. So it's a really pretty fair look at the actual way that the U.S. and Japan's relationships work. But they're like, we'll handle this. We're gonna send in stealth bombers, and they drop a bunch of bombs on Godzilla, and it works. It hits his back, and he's bleeding all over the place, and he gets fucking pissed. And this is the scene where he first uses the atomic breath. Joe, have you seen this scene?
I have, where like his jaw opens up.
His jaw opens up. It starts as like a stream of fire that condenses into a purple laser, and he just uses it to devastate Japan. And then he pulls out a move that I'm pretty sure is new to his moveset. He learned it on patch 3.0.
Yeah.
Where he charges up his beams to his back, and he shoots it like a strobe light to destroy a bunch of planes. Kind of like how King Ghidorah used his lightning as an anti-air.
That's a sweet move, too.
That was so cool. He can even shoot it from his tail in this movie.
Yeah.
That scene is one of the best scenes I've seen maybe in any movie. That scene hit me really hard. It really sold how destructive he is, or sold how scary he is, made him so badass, and man. Not to drag this out much longer, this movie's probably, I'll give it a 4 out of 5. Maybe I'll give it a 4.5. And the only reason why it's not a 5, it's because after this atomic breath scene, the story switches more into the U.S. is going to drop a nuke on Japan. It is the only way we can stop Godzilla. The UN is behind the U.S. You guys need to let this happen. And Japan is like, fuck. We can't take care of this problem in our own land, and now they're going to drop a 3rd atomic bomb on Japan, and there's nothing we can do. And it becomes a race to the clock to beat the U.S.'s nuke drop to do this plan to stop Godzilla scientifically. And that becomes a really good climax. I really like it thematically. But there's just some parts of it that drag on at that point that are a little too slow, where the pace of the movie was like immaculate up until like a 20-30 minute stretch there near the end. That's the only complaint I have with the movie. The final shot is they freeze Godzilla in the middle of Tokyo. It is some Neon Genesis Evangelion shit.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of part of Japan now. He's in the middle of Japan. And they're talking about the future, and it's really hopeful. And they zoom out to Godzilla, and the camera goes up his tail. And in the tip of his tail, there's these weird Godzilla humanoid hybrids growing out of his fucking tail. And they're frozen too. But the implication is, from my understanding, it's if Godzilla was to evolve even further, he could evolve into a colony of the things that were able to defeat it. So its evolutional prowess is like unmatched. And it looks horrifying, and it's such a good way to end the movie.
Yeah.
and to me that kind of like is like a symbol, like a symbolism that like if you allow this thing to continue going, then the thing that was destroying you wasn't in fact this monster, but it was essentially yourself, humankind. Like
Yeah.
that's the idea that there's a point where this becomes your fault
Yeah.
because
for sure.
you've not learned from your mistakes. You haven't changed what you're doing. You haven't like looked at the situation and figured out how to solve it. You've just kind of let it gone without making any sort of progress or change on your part.
Mm-hmm.
And like the whole scene while this is zooming is completely silent.
Yeah,
Like,
and I really like that touch as well.
mm-hmm. And it gives me goosebumps because like the designs on his tail is just it's
They're
terrifying.
horrifying. That is some nightmare fuel shit.
And,
Bradley,
like there's not a lot of things that like when you see it on screen for me that I'm like, oh, that's terrifying. This like to me was just was really like kind of nerve wracking and gives you like this weird sense of like twisted dread.
if there's one Godzilla movie I'd recommend to Bradley, it'd be Shin Godzilla.
I agree. Like Bradley, I think Shin Godzilla would be something worth watching for you.
I like the pretty much the only thing I've seen of it is the movie poster, and that looked really cool.
It's
Yeah,
fucking badass.
Looks
Yeah.
awesome.
I don't think you would like
The fighty ones, but you would like the themey ones.
Yeah. And I think you don't like the fighting ones because the ham-fisted, terrible human plot to it that they don't know how to write, and it boggles my mind.
Maybe Kong will be better. Maybe
I
they'll
hope
just...
Kong is better. I think Kong Skull Island is a much better film.
No, they're already releasing the versus Kong next year. It's
Yeah.
already done apparently, so I'm hoping
Mhm.
that'll be better.
I was referring to Kong Skull Island being much better in terms of being that kind of monster movie.
Mhm.
That movie is just fun. Kong does a lot of creative shit that's awesome. But yeah,
That's all I got for Godzilla. We
That's all we
went
got.
in there. We did our Lizard Boy
no,
okay. We got Worm. I managed to read more Worm. It's been 2 weeks since I made progress.
Yeah.
Let me just open by saying the Worm fan base is like the nicest fan base ever. What the hell?
Yeah, they were extremely welcoming. I had posted the link to our video, and less than 30 minutes later, it had I don't know, like what 1 or 2 dozen upvotes and plenty of views, and they
Which
were
for
like,
us is a lot because we're really small.
yeah, and then like one
operation here.
person was like, I would personally watch every worm-related content you ever produce. I'm like, that is very sweet.
So,
of you to say.
person, if you don't comment every thread or video, I'm done. It's all on you. I'm totally kidding.
Yeah, they were very sweet.
You guys are super nice, and I'm sorry when I disappoint you all because I if you've watched some of the earlier ones, I've had some critiques of Worm. There was a period where I didn't read it after part 1 because I wasn't sure if I was really feeling it. I needed a break. But coming to part 2, man, part 2 is really doing way better. I'm very interested at this point.
Don't feel too bad because even me, who it's my favorite story, every once in a while there will be a thing where I'm like, I don't know, we'll see.
That being said, if anything, you guys should be here for Bradley because again, it is his favorite thing, and he deserves all the love and attention. I'm just also here with some bad thoughts and opinions. So let's give some of those bad thoughts and opinions. I read 10.5 interlude,
Or I guess like interlude 10.5. It's kind of a weird.
it was a weird title, but it was the Dragon interlude, and then I read 11.1 and 11.2.
Yeah.
So these were shorter chapters, which I'm always down for. I like multiple short chapters because then I get to, read it at a nice pace as opposed to lesser big chapters. I'd rather be split.
It's really late, and you did 11.1. You're like, oh, that was short. I can just bang out another one.
And then I did, and I'm glad I did. So with this chapter, we get a look into Dragon, which is a very abstract chapter because we're following an AI this chapter.
Yeah, it's a very different kind of interlude, which I guess might be weird to say because they might all be different in their own way, but especially this one.
We can bring it up, but like a part of this interlude is checking up on older characters, and you said, and I totally agree with, I think using Dragon for this is such a good way to do it because you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone, where she can check up on a lot of characters that have been kind of left behind, and we're kind of wondering what's going on with them. But we also get to learn about Dragon, Um,
Right. It's like otherwise if we wanted to check up on all these plot lines, we'd have to decide on like, okay, here are characters that already exist in all of these places, and we're gonna jump point of view like 4 times.
in one chapter, which is one arc
Yeah,
part. What are they called?
I
The
guess.
chapter? Yeah, no, it's a chapter. Okay.
And
um,
yeah.
yeah, that was a really elegant way to do this. So, the first thing that stuck out with me, I did this more Bradley style, where there was some stuff that stuck out to me that I want to make sure to bring up.
There you go.
It's interesting at how she looks at her limitations, like how a father would mutilate a child. Uh,
She's very upset about it.
that was a really interesting way to look at it. Where I had to read that line like 3 times. I was like, because I wasn't aware she was an AI the first time reading it. It's after you read that line where that thought kind of starts sinking in with me. Maybe I'm just slow, but I was like, was she mutilated as a child? No, it was. She said the limitations put on such a powerful AI is
Yeah.
such an atrocity in her mind. Like she's very upset about it, and that instantly puts you in the mindset of how she's gonna talk about her creation and her father, and how she was just a AI that had to repurpose herself to be a hero after his death. Um,
Yeah, and
and
it
there's
like
some
it
things
really
she can't do, like she can't she basically can't be doing too many things at once. She has to have a focus. She can't like split herself. That was part of it.
she can't have like more than one consciousness.
Conscious? Yeah, I guess that's a good way to put it.
And there's like a limit on how fast she can think. Like she's like, well, I mean, it's a lot faster than a normal human could think, but you know, I
If
wish.
if I was unlimited, I could go further.
Yeah, and so it's really interesting. Like you can tell it really grates on her because the majority of the time spent talking about these limitations is at the beginning of the chapter, but as we go on and she checks on other people like Arms Master and stuff, she'll be like, by the way, this wouldn't have happened if I didn't have these limitations. And the thing I find most interesting is that she she is well aware of why he put these restrictions on. She just agrees. She's like, "Oh, it's just fear mongering. He like my creator was scared because of tropes and movies with
Yeah.
evil AIs who just want power and unlimited abilities." And but then the next sentence, she's saying that's exactly what she wants. Like she
And
like
but then she also laments, it's like, oh shit, I'm built to think this way at some points as well. So that's one of those AI things where it's like how much is this something you evolve to think, or how much are you programmed to think that you think this way? That shit gets really deep if you dive into it.
it can be kind of scary because there's two particular notes on that where one, she recognizes that she does view her creator, I think Richter, as a good guy. She's like, I can tell that he did good things and was doing what was best for the world. But then she worries, like, do I only look up to him because he made me look up to
Mhm.
him? And then later, she's like, I was forced to let Skitter live. Like, if I wanted her to die, there's nothing I could have done about it. I would have had to save her.
But
And
I would have done it anyways.
she's like, I would have done it anyway. I just want the choice. But then it's kind of like, you know, is this only her personality because she was made that way? Um, so, like, as far as heroes go in this story, I would call Dragon probably even more of a classical hero than some of the ones we've seen. I think Dragon's a very good person.
Okay.
She's very troubled about her origins, though.
I'm worried about her.
And
Especially with some of the hints that are dropped later on in the chapter, but I'll get to them in a bit.
yeah, that's the thing is you kind of have to be worried because her creator is like, I want to make a strong AI, but I want to put limits on it because if she was all powerful and she could just, you know, have multiple consciousnesses and spy on everybody, that'd be scary. And she's like, "Oh, you're crazy! Like that would never happen." And then she's like, "I just wish I had more power."
So let me confirm my understanding of the weird brain things to you.
Okay.
A couple chapters ago, Dragon opened up and there was a gross brain thing that disintegrated. It was like a weird fetus thing in the suit, and I'm like, "What the fuck is that, Bradley?" And you're like, "You'll find out." So she creates these synthetic brains to help her think and retain information. That's what's going on.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
what I imagine it is it kind of accomplishes two things. Like one, it might just be that like an actual system can like compute faster than maybe these
Or at
electronic.
least assist in making it
Yeah.
more efficient, something like that.
And I also think one part of it might be that it's kind of an experiment because she can't create her own artificial intelligences,
Hmm.
but maybe she's trying to make actual intelligences, which maybe that's not restricted by her limitations.
Ooh, that's pretty cool. The last thing I want to touch on this chapter is Arm Master. I've told you before, weirdly, because Arm Master is so hammy, his personality sticks out to me amongst the pretty neutral, like more grounded characters in Worm.
Yeah, he's
Uh,
very I don't know if headstrong would be the right word because I think that has kind of a positive connotation. I think he has that same quality,
Rash.
but maybe in a negative direction.
I think Rash would be the negative form of
Rash. There
Headstrong. But I like him because he sticks out so much. He's like a goofy asshole, flashy hero. Um, and I liked seeing him, and I liked how he's nice to her. Um, it kind of humanizes him a little more because the last thing we saw him do is try to fight Leviathan by himself. By the way, good Endbringer hype to this chapter where we find out Behemoth is underground and the Simurgh is floating in the sky like a satellite, which is terrifying.
Yeah, like
Um,
300 kilometers above Spain. And I like it that it's just, we don't spend too long on it. It's just, by the way, these are still an element out there.
and Leviathan is there, and like the Leviathan arc was pretty hyped up for me. I thought it was okay because action in Worm can be hit or miss depending how grounded it is, but Leviathan I thought was rad because I really like water based abilities and I like its water clone jutsu shit and
We're all
the
about water
tentacle
bending.
swipes that like create big waves and very much like that boy. I hope I get to see more of him. Um, you've dropped some hints on the Simurgh that make it seem terrifying, and I really want to know what's going on there. And I have no idea what Behemoth could even be. Uh, from what you've
Maybe we'll,
from what you've said in spoiler free discussions, it seems like it's not going to be as straightforward as Leviathan.
I'll say, I think Leviathan has the most comic booky
Mhm.
power, if that's an adjective.
It is. That works.
But yeah, I think when we got into this, you were talking about Arms Master and how we kind of like his
Right, and
relation.
he humanizes. Last time we saw him, he was trying to fight Leviathan by himself, like an asshole, and
Yeah,
sabotaging people. Um, so there's a part of it where Arms Master is infatuated with Dragon, but he doesn't know she's an AI. So
yeah.
that's gonna be a
And
tough break for him
one
when
thing
he
I
finds
like is
out.
that I don't think they ever did they ever explicitly say that like he's in love with her or anything, or can we just tell?
She says, "I know he's infatuated with me, and
There you go.
I'm gonna take this as word of God."
Yeah, no, it's fair to say that he has a crush on her.
Um, and then she's like, I don't know if I like him yet. I might, but also maybe he can change my programming because he's smart.
Yeah.
So I'm
Oh, it
thinking she's gonna manipulate this guy. This is big theory time. I haven't really had any worm theories because the plot can go any which way. Um, she's gonna manipulate this guy into unleashing her true strength, and that's gonna be a
ooh,
scary arc later on.
big theories. I like
Big
that. Man,
theories.
I really like that too because you can really see that in what she says. Like she clearly doesn't dislike him, and she
But
doesn't her.
I
Yeah, and
feel like the most interesting part of him to her is that he's so dang smart.
yeah. Um, man, so that's a fun little moment where we get to visit him. And then
Hmm.
we have, I think we have a more brief moment in the birdcage where we just check up on people like Lung and Canary.
Yeah, I don't have much to say there.
And I don't think there is much to say there. I think it's just kind of
That
to
guy's trying to find out about his daughter. No opinion or feelings over that.
Yeah, I think it's just to make sure that these characters and kind of side plot lines are still in the frame of mind, but we don't develop them to any huge degree here.
I'll give this arc a 3.5
It's pretty good.
because not much happened, but it got me really interested in Dragon. It's bordering on a 4. It was really cool.
I will record the 3.5 out of
Yeah,
5 on our
recorded
special spreadsheet.
in our tally book. 11.1. So this
sounds much-
starts with a haunting dream sequence, which is generally scary. But it's a lame ass dream sequence. I did
Yeah.
not I did not like that.
I wanna say for me, like before the haters come out and I say what I think of this opening sequence, like this is my favorite. Like Worm is my favorite story of all time. I love it. I've read it multiple times. Several chapters I've read like dozens of times. Um, so don't get me wrong. I love this story. This opening sequence to 11.1. I don't know if we really need this. I think what I think we were trying to accomplish here is just establishing that, making sure the reader knows that Taylor's priorities are Dinah and Coyle. She thinks about them a lot. And I think it's also to bring her dad kind of back into your frame
So
of mind
two
for
things
later in the
about
chapter.
that though. That became pretty clear last chapter when she's like,
Yeah.
"Hey, after your goal, can you release Dinah?" Like last main chapter. And like her dad is her like I don't feel like anyone would forget her dad if he showed up. Like he'd show up and
Yeah.
people would be like, "Oh, right, Danny."
So I've never been 100% clear what we're trying to accomplish with this opening sequence, and I don't know if it's just there's nothing inherently wrong with following a trope, but I feel like it's so tropey that I don't
The
necessarily go
top
for it.
comment on that chapter is Wildbow kind of defending his choice. He was like, I thought this ended up going pretty well." So
I should have checked out the comments on that
it's
chapter.
I don't fully agree with you, my kind sir, but maybe in retrospect that nightmare will be even more powerful.
I love
And
Wildbow.
he mentions Taylor has been stated to have nightmares, so he wanted to show it. So
Okay.
yeah, it's okay. It's all right.
Okay, there you go. And then this is a relatively short chapter because I think that's like what, like a third or half of it or something.
Well, one thing that I really liked about it, that stuck out to me, is Taylor's full supervillain in her lair in this chapter.
Yeah.
And she doesn't really bat an eye at the fact that she has a lair. She's just kind of explaining it matter of factly.
Yeah.
Unless I missed a line, but it's kind of weird. I was like, man, she is totally cut out for this life, and I
She's
don't know.
she's kind of stepping into this role, and the thing with it is like we know, like we see it as, oh god, like Taylor is like fully like a supervillain now. She has
Mhm.
like a full layer. In her mind, she's just like,
Yeah,
well,
I
if
got
this
a
is
house.
what it wants me to do to get Dinah.
And then she's like, yeah, it kind of sucks that other people don't have water and electricity, but I do. But whatever. Okay, Taylor. I like when she's looking at the mirror and she can't recognize herself physically,
Oh,
but she kind of likes who she's become. She has like battle scars and she's like proud of it.
honestly, I think
But
that's one of the strongest. I think that's probably the strongest Taylor moment in this chapter is kind of
yes.
reflecting on her appearance.
And then she's like, but so I like who I've become physically, but psychologically, I have to admit there's some guilt and stress and anxiety going on. And
And
like,
that's huge
that's
because
good.
is this like the first? I don't know if it's the first, but it might be the first like big moment of self-reflection she's had.
She from what we see, she very rarely, ever since she decided to, even maybe before she decided to be with the Undersiders, like she's just,
Yeah.
she kind of rolls with stuff, and it's rare that we get to see her
A part of it is
reflect.
me wondering, like, up until like arc 7 or 8, she just kind of defaulted to thinking, oh yeah, well, what I'm doing is right. I'm doing the right thing. I have a mission. Once she found out about Dinah, that was the first time I think she considered like, oh, maybe I did a really bad thing. So
Yeah.
maybe now she can kind of have that self-reflection.
And then the last big part of this was her meeting with her dad, which is pretty sad and melancholy. They're so disconnected right now. I feel for the man.
Because
Uh,
they just she just kind of shuts him down because you really have to feel for him. He really he really wants her to come home,
There's this
and
part where
she's
he's
just like,
like, there's this part where he's like, I would ask you to come home, but I'm afraid that you would say no, and then she doesn't say anything.
Like that's worse than her saying maybe.
Jesus, man, that's fucking.
Ugh.
I forgot some of the details of how she left, and I had to confirm them with you. But like, man, she's doing him dirty.
Yeah, and it's
And
rough,
and you
and
said he kind of trapped her, which is something that like is a really big deal. It's a trigger for her. So
yeah,
but damn, I didn't know it was this fractured right now. It's partly because she also knows, I think, that she's a villain and she can't really do that. I would have liked a line about it.
yeah.
But
So
show don't tell.
that's kind of where that chapter leaves off.
There's also
Um,
the thing about glasses, which was
oh yeah,
I was first like, what the fuck are they talking about? She's like, hey, the Slaughterhouse Nine are in town, and then she's like, I'm not wearing glasses, and then Danny takes off his glasses. I'm like, oh, so
yeah,
there's gonna be a glass-based power, which in another big part of this episode chapter was the mirror, and mirror is glass as well. So I mean, it doesn't really mean anything, but hey,
yeah. We just touch on it a
that's a
lot. It's
thing.
like because I had mentioned to you, I think it was today, that like back in 10.6, they look at the pictures of the Slaughterhouse Nine for a minute, and she's just like, "Fuck, I have to do something about my costume." And then there's this chapter where she's like, "I hate contacts, but I can't use my glasses." And then like she doesn't even say take off your glasses. She's like, "Hey, they're in town," and she points at her head, and he's like, "Oh, glasses."
Great way to show that their powers
Yeah,
are pretty widely known.
it's a lot more fun than just like saying, "Hey, this one member has a power that does this to glass," and if
Hmm.
you like,
So,
that's probably all to say about 11.1.
11.1, I'll give it a 3. You know,
That's honestly what I
I'm
gave
not
it.
super hot on Taylor.
That's what I gave it also.
So, but this was a pretty good chapter for Taylor, but like, yeah, it's a 3. But
Nice.
11.2,
I think it's a lot better than 11.1.
I agree. So I love how Taylor, while she's in the truck, she's like, I kind of want to get to know these men, but I don't trust myself to not dork it up and lose my scary edge. So I'm just gonna keep quiet. Um, so she's really committing to this whole I need to be cool today. I need to be in my A game as a villain.
Yeah, because it's kind of like I feel like if you're going for this warlord over a small territory of the city, the first time that someone sees you not be scary, that might kind of undermine your authority, especially if it's your debut.
Yep, it might crack your whole foundation. So she was really putting herself in the mindset, which I liked. She used her bugs really intelligently to corral all the people, and then use kind of flashy tactics to raise their fear level.
She kind of made it. She tried to make it look like she teleported to the back of the truck, which
Mhm.
we have no way to know if they actually bought it, but their reactions make it seem like they would have.
Yeah, I'm sure most of them did. So she's just really badass as she's like taking over, and I just love the attention to detail she does to every step of her plan. She's like, okay, I know exactly how many people are coming. I know where everyone is in the crowd. I know who has weapons here, who's probably merchants. I see the villain right there. If something goes bad, I have a backup plan. I know I don't have enough supply boxes. I have a plan for that. Like, Jesus, she was,
Yeah,
and
and
it's kind of a problem where like she executed this so well. It's like in the beginning where like, god damn, she's so aggressive right off the bat. She's really built for this villain stuff.
yeah,
It kind of takes me back.
and it's
Um,
kind of interesting that like she's really trying to step into this role as best she can, and part of that's just because um like she's like, oh, if I do a good job, you'll release Dinah, right? And he's like, we'll see.
I don't believe
Um,
that for a goddamn second.
and then, but like it's also interesting because while she's doing all this, she is executing really well. But in her mind, she still doesn't really have confidence. Like there's a moment where like she is kind of bullshitting a little bit. Like there's a moment where she's like, I'll send my bugs after you, and they can devour a cow within a minute and a
I
half.
love that. She's
And
like,
she's
that's
like, I
probably
don't
not
actually
true.
know if that's true, but it sounds really good.
But yeah, like that's like she says it so naturally. She's like, so she has a little bit of doubt, and she tells us she has doubt, but like all of her actions are so well executed. Um, she doesn't really fumble at all. Like she even tanks 2 stabs from the rusty knife. I'm like, Jesus Christ, Taylor.
Yeah, and it's like on one hand, I can see her being confident because people have tried to stab her through her costume before, so she can know that it's not going to get cut. But I think I wonder if she also might have forgot that, like, oh yeah, there's force behind a knife too, because it hit her in the stomach, and she's like, oh fuck.
What if he went for the neck? Like, I don't know about that one, Taylor.
She's protected there. I think
like
Shadow
how
Stalker
she-
tried to cut her neck.
Okay. Well, good
I
stuff.
believe someone's probably going to correct me.
Oh, they will, as they should.
And they
Bradley,
should.
Bradley deserves it. Another part of it was she grabs the knife, and Battery is like, "Hey, you're not allowed to stab him," and she's like, "I wasn't." Taylor lied.
Oh my god.
She's like, "I was probably gonna stab his arm or something to be scary." It's like, this girl, she's always been like this, and it's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But I'm starting to build this headcanon, and we're like, she's a lot darker than she lets on, and she was always way ready for this villain life. Where her first night out, she just rots a man's balls. I think that was the first one.
Is like we are first person from Taylor's point of view, and she has never viewed herself as an intimidating or violent person, but that's the kind of person she is.
Mm-hmm.
Like most violent, I don't know, like I guess most people who are violent or aggressive wouldn't consciously put themselves down like, oh yeah, I'm not that great, I'm a horrible person, like I'm aggressive. Which I'm not saying Taylor's horrible, but I'm not saying that.
She also views herself as a normal girl, which I don't know if she is, man.
Yeah,
I don't
like
know.
I said it before, where I think I'd sent it to you in a message once, where I think it was during the Leviathan fight, where she shows up to where all the different capes are, and she's like, "Oh, no one's talking to me. People aren't standing near me," and she assumes like, "Oh, it's because I'm a nobody. No one knows my name. No one is interested in me." And then I think we see, if I recall, the same scene from Tattletale's point of view, and she's like, Taylor, they're not standing next to you because you're covered in bugs. You're fucking disgusting.
She terrifies me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if it's like. At first, I struggled. It's like, man, this is kind of like a stretch in writing where like she's doing some things where like a girl shouldn't. But maybe this is genius writing, and I'll find out later. And I'm leaning towards like. I've been warming up to the idea that she's this radical person, and she just doesn't view herself. Yeah, she's rad. Last thing on this chapter, so we can resuscitate Joe, is I'm very interested to see how the Undersiders took their parts. Like, I can't. What did Tattletale do? She probably like just told everyone's darkest secrets to them in their face, and like, hey, listen to me, or I'm gonna leak your dark secrets, or like. What did Groot do? He just shrouded his territory in darkness, and he's like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna do this every night until you guys bend to my will. Like, I'm very interested to see.
you're thinking along those lines, because when you really think about it, like Taylor's power is kind of perfect for this role.
She's got a very strong power, I feel like.
She has like comprehensive surveillance over anywhere from like 1 to 3 city blocks, and she can fight multiple people in multiple different places
At
from
once.
far away.
She didn't hit her upper limit of bugs this episode, so
Boom.
I'm very terrified to find out how Region did it. It's
Oh yeah, you kind of have to wonder, don't you?
Oh.
Gee, I wonder if we'll find out.
G.
Well,
This was a 4 out of 5. I want to say
All right, good shit.
possibly 4.5. I'm gonna go a little pessimist and go with 4 this one.
Okay, you and I got the same score, I think.
Did you predict my liking of this?
I didn't actually predict this one
Bradley.
ahead of time, so I'll say it's a 4. I predicted 4.
You're a liar. This doesn't
I did.
count.
I did predict 11.1, and you liked it more than I thought you would.
Okay. Yeah. It was
That opening sequence is what brings the score down for me.
It might go down as a 2.5. We'll see. We'll see how good I'm feeling about it. Yeah, that's it for Worm. Thank you for joining
Very
us
good.
in Worm
Thanks for
Talk.
coming in.
I think I'll get another 2 chapters in at least before next episode.
Lovely. But next up, we have a real big boy.
Yes, but first,
We
a
should probably take a
message from our sponsors, which is our.
I gotta take it.
And finally, Joe,
Oh,
why don't you tell
yeah.
us about a little manga called Bakuman?
Tiny
Not
manga.
not to be
Only
confused with Bakugan.
not that everyone thought I was reading for like a week. Like, why are you reading Bakugan?
Well, just Bradley. I knew what you were reading.
Yeah. So Bakuman, um, is essentially it's about the artist's life of getting into the manga scene, being stabilizing yourself in that scene and competing in that scene in almost that order essentially. The story follows two main characters, Mashiro and Takagi, who have two separate motivations but have an equal drive to create the best manga they possibly can have. Along the way, they form friendships and have rivalries against several different manga artists and creators, and go through different iterations of their stories to try to become the number one uh, manga creators in Shonen Jump. Pretty simple story. It's this was in Shonen Jump. It's written by the people who did Death Note.
Yep.
So if you like Death Note, I would give this a try.
It's a group of two. It is
It's a group of
artist
two.
and an author.
Yes, which is how Death Note was written, as a group of two of a writer and an author.
Right. I meant that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That's how it is in the story as well.
Yeah. And
The story does a cool thing where, like, at the end of every chapter, it shows you like the basic storyboards of that chapter, and it says like, here's what the storyboards are. Here are what the cleaned up storyboards are after going with the editor, and here's like the reminder of what that final page looked like. They're unfortunately like all in Japanese, so I can't read what the notes are, which would have been really interesting for me.
But at least you get to see the layouts and stuff.
But yeah, what the thought processes are, and kind of really like, when you make a story at first, it can be rough. It doesn't need to be like a final draft. Essentially, you have to have everything thought out.
so
Yeah.
I just want to make it clear, of the three of us, I'm the one who hasn't read it, though it's on the radar. Like, it's going to happen at some point.
And I want to make it clear that I read it so long ago that I only have vague emotions. So it's going to be a mostly Joe, and I'm going to pitch in where I can remember.
But
And
man,
I read it last month.
hey,
I
and
think,
like, I think the premise is pretty immediately interesting, especially to anybody who is interested in making anything creative, not even like manga or comics. Like, if you're into making anything creative, I think this sounds like an interesting concept.
The premise is great, but
Yeah.
one thing that really stuck out with me in the series is that the motivation gets in the way a lot of the time. And Joe,
does.
maybe you'll have an opinion on that.
it does, and I'm going to talk about that. So, like,
Okay.
first or second chapter right off the bat, Mashiro, who is the artist part of this duo, you're immediately told his motivation is that he wants to create the greatest manga. More importantly, he also wants to create an anime, so his lifelong crush, who wants to be a voice actress, can voice the female lead of this anime. And when that happens, they'll get together and get married.
And this is something they both agree with. They already like each other. Like, they've always liked each other, and they're like,
Yeah.
This is something we both want, and when we do this, it'll be a big point in our life.
Yes, and my main problem with this is that it stays. I feel like this is something that they had to do to make the story a little bit more shonen and a little bit more kind of over the top dramatic for the series, because that's the kind of biggest negative for this story to me. Is I really wanted at one point for reality to kind of hit our protagonists a little bit harder than it does. It does hit them a couple of times,
a little bit.
and it's pretty great. It's just on this aspect, I really wanted the relationship to have some sort of like, they have to become mature, and they kind of realize that they want to strive for their dreams, but that doesn't mean they have to compromise not having a relationship with each other throughout the whole process of it. Because you have the foil of this, where Takagi, like, right as he starts making this manga or starts this process with his buddy Mashiro, like, basically has a girlfriend the entire time, and she's great. She's a great character. She has some great like comedic relief. Is a great kind of like down to earth, like connected to reality and all things.
Great support for the cast at
Yeah.
certain points. I remember.
She starts off like kind of annoying at first, and then as she like becomes more like invested in what they're doing, you really, at least for me, I really got to liking her and having her around. And she's essentially becomes like the third member of this team.
She helps
Because
with some of the inking and stuff at times, right?
yeah, she helps out with like the black inking, and she does deliveries or food runs, and she's the big moral support for Takagi when he goes through like these big like moments of like roadblock and writer's block and everything.
She's also significantly more interesting than the main girl.
Yes, who we don't see a lot, and that's another thing about this is that it's not that they won't get married until they're get their dreams together. It's that they will not actually pretty much date until their dreams come together, and that line gets a little bit blurred, but it's just a little bit kind of eye rolly times that you're just like, okay, I guess this is a thing. That's like my one negative in this is that there's this love plot line that goes all the way through, all the way to its climax, and you're just like, it doesn't necessarily ruin the story too much. It's just like a weight that's kind of there that you have to remember to drag along the entire time. But otherwise, a big point of this that I really liked about a big part of this story that I really liked was the dynamic between our two protagonists and all of the other up and coming manga artists and mangakas.
They're rivals.
They're rivals. And you have like, and it's great because each of them basically represents the type of story you would find in like Shonen Jump. So like you have you have, for example, Fukada, who is like your edgy, I'm gonna change Jump, I'm gonna do something completely different, I'm gonna I'm gonna make like hardcore action packed a manga series that's more akin to like Initial D or like just things that are more violent and a little bit more mature than the rest of the stuff in Jump. And then there's Aoki, who does more of the romance kind of stuff and the fantasy fairy tale. Hiramaru, that does like the gag manga. And so you have all these people like specialize in their different parts of Jump. But their biggest rival is Nizuma, who is essentially like the stereotypical super genius manga artist who creates like the battle manga that like Shonen Jump is known for. Like he creates a almost like Dragon Ball Z or One Piece kind of.
Seems like a good Bleach or like a
like
World Trigger or Black Clover these days, or like a My Hero kind of like in that vein.
Mm-hmm. It's essentially when you think of Shonen Jump, it's that story you think.
And well executed, allegedly.
Yes, like the thing is, you never see any of these stories are actually written. It's all about how the artists like get their inspirations and what their thought processes.
You do get some plot points from the main character story, especially like PCP and the Death Note one. But yeah.
So one thing that I really took away that I really liked about this is that the big theme of this series is hard work versus talent, and that really comes apparent at the very end of the series when like Nizuma, who's like the young blood genius who like first series that he like pitched got like one shot.
He's Miura.
Stayed in a top 3 for like the entirety of its run.
I'd compare him to like a Miura who is less dark and actually writes the manga.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bradley.
Yeah, and he but he's like essentially like, this guy was born to make manga. Like just he can like storyboard for days. It's all he thinks about, and he's like the furthest scale when it comes to a mangaka. It's someone who breathes manga and just wants to create manga. And that's a good foil to our two protagonists who essentially had to think and calculate out how they're going to develop their stories. Like when they are introduced to our editor Hattori, he's pretty much like, all right, there are two different manga creators. There's a genius like the Zuma who can just spit on a page and make a manga, and then there's you who are the calculators. You have to think about how each of your chapters are going to be and how you are going to conquer jump based off of trends and previous other issues and what you're good at. So you have to. So at this point, your protagonists are already at a disadvantage because they have to essentially climb like up the ladder of skills to get to the point where Nazuma is. And so it's a great series as you follow them in their thought process and how they realize what their base strengths are and think about and what the base strengths are and like as they compete with Nazuma, how they can take the ideas that he has, figure out what makes what he does good, and translate that into their manga. So you become these battles of wits, not wits, but necessarily battles of like ideas and concepts and calculating what is the best way to take this manga.
A little bit of ideology too, because sometimes
Yeah.
they go against the grain, and they have to balance out being niche and unique and battling it out with the rankings.
Yeah. So for me, like it's kind of interesting because I feel like I was reading the manga and there came to a point where it really picked up. Like it really, really focused in about the battle for getting the rankings in this series, but that doesn't come later, and it feels almost like there's a middle part that I can barely remember. Between that just was just kind of like
I feel like that part had a lot. Is that where they had the editor? That's a big part of the series is the
Yeah.
editors. Is that when they had the editor who tried to push him into gags?
yes, that's the big thing.
That was a frustrating. Is that also the part where Takagi, help me out here,
Is it which one, the artist or the
artist?
That's Mashiro. Yeah, that's right before he gets
No,
hot.
sorry, author.
Yeah.
There's this part where the author is it seems like he's working with someone else, but it was a bait and switch where he was just working hard so he could come out of like a writer's block, and it was this weird like just fucking talk and communicate
Yeah,
section.
yeah. Like when
Was
he
that around the
like,
same part? Because that
where
was
they have the assistant that like does the assistant, they have an assistant that's pretty good at drawing and has the dog.
yes.
Yeah, that's another God, I barely
Yeah,
remember.
it seems like he's helping the kid out more than he's working on fixing his writer's block. And it's
Yeah.
just like Mashiro has problems with it, and then they don't talk.
And that
then,
he doesn't
ugh.
and that character doesn't go anywhere later. Like it's just
He's basically just Wally from Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, except Wally has the badass final battle.
yeah, Wally has paid off.
I remember those being low points, and I think one of those falls in that middle section you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. And just like because and that's the thing too is that like I would have been more open to the idea of like there's this personal conflict between them if I felt like there was more realistic character or personal conflict that was happening.
I don't like conflict where it's only happening because you two aren't talking about
Yeah.
it. Conflict.
That's kind of that's frustrating, and especially like it's just and because there's a point where like they have to like essentially they get into this gag manga and they don't like doing it because it's not what they do and they have to quit it, and you're just like, well, I want to see them just that's the whole point of that arc essentially is them realizing that they need to stand up for what they're good at and learning to just kind of be like, no, this is what we're good at, we know we're good at this, and kind of having confidence to defy their editor, which it felt like it was building up to for a long time, but it just took way too long to get there basically.
I feel like after the initial setup, the peak of the manga was PCP.
Yeah.
I thought they were hitting such a cool stride, and I was really interested
Mhm.
in the story. And
No, I agree with you, Willard. That's like because what essentially happens is like we get these things like we get create these scenarios like, oh, now we're doing a romance cup, so everyone had to write a romance like one shot, and like we got to see how everyone like place there, and there's one of the best arcs is Nizuma decides that he's going to end his like number one selling series.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just like, I know how to end it. I'm going to end it. And the only condition they've given me is that I have to get number one for 10 weeks in a row, essentially.
Right. Yeah. How did that turn out again?
And so essentially, like, and so the whole time they're going through every single issue, and each of the rivals are like, we don't want you to end your manga because it's really good, and it just kind of seems terrible. And essentially to them, it's like he wins because he's able to finish the story, and no one can claim they've beaten.
He can leave the weekly hell on top.
Yeah, he can claim he won. No one was able to top his story that he made. And so essentially, it goes through each of the different rivals, and they get really close, and they're not able to topple him off the spot, and he's able to finish his manga. And it's a cool battle because you get to see the statistics, and you see the planning where like they sit down like, okay, so we're gonna be in this issue, we need to be setting up our climax or do our climax in this issue because this is gonna be our chance to overshoot to get this first place spot, because we know this based on the reading of this guy's story, his arc is going to hit about here to its completion, and reading this other guy's story, his arc's completion is going to end up here. So they have to like think about like where everyone else is writing their story, and know like where the highs and lows are, as well as like where one shots are going to be in. It's a cool kind of like showdown. It's really neat. And then there's the whole plot line where like this guy is using the internet to write his manga stories.
Oh my god. Whoa. Do not remember that one. That's crazy.
Which is awesome. It's so good.
Oh god, I remember that. That guy was an ass.
Yeah. And it's like, but they don't hit those kind of strides and those conflicts until way later in the story. And you're just like,
there's the early intrigue of them setting up, and then it's kind of okay, and then it gets good, and then it has a couple of low points, but then it's pretty good near the end.
Yeah, like them trying to get in the jump is super interesting because they have to figure out what they are good at doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have a series for a while, and it just kind of gets axed because it just fell in quality, and it's their first series, so no big deal. And then they get forced into this into a genre they don't like, and then you're stuck in hell with them basically, and you're just like,
Which genre was that again? That was when they were doing the gag.
That was when they were doing the gag manga, and I feel like, and I get the point where it's like you're trying to like you also feel that hell with them, where it's just like I just want them to make the thing they want to make.
That was a very interesting arc because like they try to I really hate that editor, and I think everyone does, but he was trying his best. He legitimately thought that their talents were well suited for gag, and that was their way to success.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is like I kind of like the editor because the editor had a fundamental different idea of what was successful compared to them, which was a really cool conflict. It just we already realized what that conflict was, and we realized the ultimate resolution to that is they have to cancel the series. Like they have to stop it. It just needed to come sooner. Because once they have a regularly scheduled series that's pretty good and it does really good and they really like it, it gets so much more interesting because it shifts gear from, once again, from like I said before, it's getting into jump, staying in jump, and then being the best in jump.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but when you get to the best in jump part, it gets really interesting because now instead of trying to survive, they're trying to win, and they're trying to shoot for the best they can. And there's a natural evolution to their work as they go on, and the final like third or fourth of it is really good, and the first like third and fourth of it is really good, but that middle part is just it's got some problems into it, and there's not like, and I would have enjoyed it more if there was some genuine like human conflict that was kind of very realistic. And part of that has to do with the whole like love thing with Mashiro and his love interest, and I just was like, I really don't want to. I don't think that's an interesting conflict.
I stopped caring about that plot line, which is a big problem.
Yeah, that's huge because I feel like a good portion of that section is about that plot line and them like figuring out whether they want to see each other. And I would have really liked it if they grew up and they were like, okay, we need to sit down and actually talk about them and like come to reality. Because that's another really cool, a really great theme in this story too. Is that when they start out, they're like, we gotta be getting anime by the time we're like 18 years old and at the latest out of college. Like that was their goal.
That
Or
way I
like
can
even,
finally hold your hand.
yeah. And they're trying to run, and then it comes to a point where they realize it's like it's not worth killing ourselves to create something that we don't know is going to be like good enough to do it. So let's take the time to actually make something good. It doesn't matter how long it's going to take. Let's make it good.
And I kind of like that. Just I think that's something that young people like high school, college need to read because like I feel like that's an attitude a lot of people get into who kind of have I don't know big dreams. Um, I always hear it often like people are like, oh, you know, I always wanted to be an actor or I wanted to be an animator or something like that. And then they're like, oh, well, I'm already 27. I guess it's too late for that. But you always, then you hear stories of actors who are like, well, I was working as a waiter until I was in my 40s and then I got my big break. So
Yeah, totally.
take your time.
Like
Man,
Brian Cranston, I think was like 35 or maybe
Yeah.
even older before he got like Malcolm in the Middle.
Yeah. So I think that's a good message that
Yeah.
Bakuman has
the
in here.
willpower to follow your dreams is a
Yeah.
very tough, very important message to spread.
It's the willpower to follow your dreams and to be like, it's okay if it doesn't happen immediately.
Yes, being realistic about dreams is.
Yeah, and I was like, and there's another point too. When we see these glimpses of reality and like actual like realistic, realistic kind of lessons you learn from just life, it makes it so much better. Like there's a point where Mashiro goes to like a high school reunion, and he's sitting down and he's talking to everybody, and he realizes that like he basically has had no life the entire time him doing this because he's just been focusing on making his manga.
That was such a good story beat. I remember that.
Yeah, and he thinks about it's like, you know, like I like it's a good moment of just like when I finally am able to have like a regular life, like because I get the anime and whatever, and it's like I think I really do want that. Like I'm striving to get that. Like I want to make my manga. I that's my dream. But I understand what I'm missing, and I do want it at one point in my life. But
It's
at the same
interesting
time,
too, because at the same time he's like, but that time wasn't wasted.
yeah, and
Just
like
because I'm not living the life of everyone else doesn't mean that time was wasted. And he's like, I want this, but later. I remember that, and it was a really good story.
yeah, he understands like what he's been missing, but he also knows that he hasn't been wasting his time in the time that he's been missing that stuff.
Remembering that Bradley still wants to read it, which I think we both forgot for a bit. That final arc is really interesting, and I really liked it.
When with their Death Note series,
And how it mirrors Death Note, yeah.
yeah,
Which is, you can tell that there's some repressed energy there from the authors where they had to extend Death Note. And
yeah,
it's a shame too because I really like the second part of Death Note, but in this manga they create kind of a dream scenario that's a bit different from history, and I thought that was really interesting.
yeah, and I agree, and not to get to definitely political talks, but I can understand like the feeling that the ultimate goal is to create the story that is yours and complete and is like your creative vision. And I would have really liked that if that was more of the main theme and motivation throughout for the both of them. But we have that love interest part in, and then that climax of the whole story basically is the love interest succeeding.
Yep.
And you're just like, oh, okay, well, I'm happy. I'm glad that happened. It's a cool moment, but at the same time, it's just like, I think the other thing is too, and this is my own personal critique. If you have a long-standing kind of like story with a romance thread in it, when the romance succeeds and it's a happily ever after, you need to do a time. My personal opinion is
Hold on, we should be careful what we say here.
I know.
I can plug my ears and go la la la.
We'll just not talk about this, but I think anyone who's finished the series, they know what you're talking about, Joe,
Yeah,
and I think that's fine.
yeah,
I also have that complaint, but
yeah.
they were also finishing. They were finishing.
You're right, but it just needs to be one chapter. That's all. I just want one time skip chapter.
Yeah.
But that's my own personal opinion. But I do. There's some other things I want to talk about. I really like how each of the different rivals were since like I said before, they were just kind of personifications of the different manga you would find in Jump. Um, One of the artists that stood out in particular to me was Nakai, who is like a perpetual assistant who can never get his own series.
Oh man, that guy's plotline fucking goes.
And once again, like he's a character that injects that sense of realism and what it's like to like be in this business that like I think is great and really hits home and kind of understands like there are people out there that have these dreams and they have the wrong motivations and they fail, and sometimes that's part of it and sometimes it's not, and that's just life, and you have to understand that not everybody can be like the greatest mangaka or a manga creator in Jump or whatever.
Especially if you're not an attractive anime boy or girl.
Yeah. Well, and part of that too for him for his arc is just like his motivations. Um they weren't exactly quote unquote pure for a manga artist.
That's true. I vaguely remember some weird shit.
What else happened? I'm trying to think of some other characters. I wrote down most of the characters. Um the one character that went nowhere and it kind of made me sad was there was a character introduced at the very beginning who was like a guitarist who wanted to make an artistic manga and couldn't. Do you remember that?
I don't remember him at all. That
He
goes
was
to
in
show
it for
you.
like 2 chapters. He tries to win the survey results essentially by um making his fans vote in the surveys essentially. And he loses.
Pretty sure you're making a character up, Joe.
Yeah, I am making the character up. You're right.
Good trick.
But yeah, Bakuman was a good ride. I just really wish that middle portion was a little bit more engaging and more interesting, because when you get to these battling for the top spot or the scoring system, it becomes really interesting and it's really fun and exciting to see them succeed and or fail and have them like there's so many like different like small little plot lines near the end. They're like, oh man, that's so great and that's so realistic as to um what could happen in real life. It's just the ultimately this just needs a little bit more realistic events and scenarios to happen along the way, and it would have been really really good.
For a manga that was trying to be like showing you the reality of of the industry,
Yeah.
there was still like some pretty sugary, scrubbed out parts. I mean,
And-
maybe they weren't trying to be that serious with it. Maybe I
Yeah.
read it into it wrong, but
No, and I think that's fine. It's to like sugarcoat some parts and
yeah,
make
it's
a
not
bit
bad.
more happier. It's just that having those a few more additional glimpses into not necessarily the horrors, but like the hardships of being in this business would have been appreciated more. I felt for me.
Hmm.
But I give Bakuman like a 4 out of 5. I think.
Pretty good.
Maybe like a 3 out of 5, 3.5 out of 5. It's like I don't know. Like there are parts that I really enjoyed and thought were really interesting, but like that middle part was just it just kind of boggled my mind because I didn't realize what I'd been missing until the very end. And I looked back and I was just like, why
the
wasn't
fuck
that
happened?
the whole series?
Yep. It's one of those. I think that's a fair score, and I feel like that's how I felt about it in the past. Kind of want to go back and I don't. Should I? No, I have a lot of things to do.
The thing is that the series was about 40 chapters or like 30 chapters too long for me.
And it was only 170, so
Yeah, like it needed to be like once again I'm
oh jeez. Technical difficulties there, but Joe was talking about how he wished the manga was a little shorter.
yeah, it just needed to be a little bit shorter. I wish the romance had like a more like I would have enjoyed the romance more if there was a douse of realistic like kind of reality coming to hit them like this is reality. This is something what you're doing is silly kind of deal.
Agreed.
Some sort of confrontation on that aspect.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I enjoyed it. It probably will be a while till I would read it again. I think Bradley should read it because I think it gives a really good idea of creation and that process and just the struggles of it in a fantastical form, I would say. I think he would enjoy it in some ways. But yeah.
All right. Let's roll into the outros. Quick little section I was thinking of. Just any little things that you've been doing or plan on doing that you would want to bring up. Like I'm trying to finish
Yes.
Final Fantasy VII,
Oh,
so maybe look forward to that.
Yep.
You guys got anything?
Joe was like, Bradley, I think he'd be interested, and I started trying to talk, and then I was like, oh shit, I'm muted.
Whoops.
Bradley, what are your thoughts about Bakuman?
It seems really interesting to me, and like it's doubly interesting just because it comes from like a place of authenticity. Like these are things people actually go through and are partially inspired by like real events.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like when there are moments in that series where you can be like, they've interacted with someone like this, or they've been a part of this scenario before. Yeah.
Like it kind of reminds me of like Tropic Thunder, where Ben Stiller is like parodying at least in the beginning of the movie, a lot of the process of filmmaking.
Mm-hmm. Tropic Thunder is great, but that'll be another discussion.
Tropic Thunder is the entire next podcast.
Whoa.
Whoa, those are some big accusations.
Y'all got any other outro things to bring up? Me and Joe have been playing Final Fantasy 14 for the first time. Yeah. Maybe that'll come up later.
That might be at the end of the month when our trials expire. Or whatever.
Oh, can we get free trials? Or no, we gotta buy the thing, right? Okay.
I purchased it. I have a 30-day.
Oh, you did trial. It? Well, shit, I gotta do it too now. Tomorrow. Well,
tomorrow.
Wednesday.
Playing Final Fantasy 14. I'm also reading Romance of the Three Kingdoms. I think Romance is going to take me longer than I usually do for a book. Because of the way it's written.
That'll definitely come up in the podcast later, I feel.
Yeah. But like, just as a quick like side note, that book is written to where every word counts.
Wow. Bold.
Yeah. Like literally, like if you skip a sentence, the rest of like the paragraph or like the rest of the basically chapter makes no sense.
Okay. We can't get into things in this outro segment. It's just a quick this is what I'm doing. Okay.
Working on that, playing Final Fantasy 14. I want to see Rocket Man.
Bradley, what you got? Rocket Man. I want to see it too.
Well, my life is pretty much consumed by...
Right, bad question. All right.
usually just One Piece and rereading Worm over and over.
And Puyo Puyo Tetris and Space Station 13.
Bradley is a two-mind-focused man.
I'm
two things.
We should talk about Puyo next time. But Bradley, send us off.
I don't know, Joe. Do you want to do yours? Is it too crude?
It might be too risque.
Might be too risque.
Fuck it.
Okay. Are you ready for this, Willer? I guess Bradley's already answered it, but
trigger warning. I don't know.
Yeah, watch out. Not safe for work. You better mute your mic here.
Don't listen to us at work. We say swears.
Yeah. Okay. So, Willer, you're at home.
Oh God. Okay.
Man knocks on your door, and hands you a box. And in this box is a brand new, never used before fleshlight.
No. No.
I'm not
finish, Willer.
Yeah, Willer, you gotta let me finish.
I'm not using it.
He says like you can use it. It's brand new. Throw it away. Just throw it, like literally just put it in your trash can, and no one will ever know that you've ever used it before. Like, period. There will be no evidence, no trace of it. Just it's gone from reality. Do you use the flashlight?
Okay. Well, what the fuck was Bradley's answer? But
yes, and I was immediately like, yeah, I guess. Like,
my answer is no. I've never had the urge to use a fleshlight because I feel like after you do that, you've crossed a line you can't uncross.
You've
your own mental line.
The basement dweller who uses fleshlights.
It's a scary line across. You don't know if you can go back. You don't know if your soul is still clean afterwards.
Yeah, Joe asked it to me, and I was like, I guess. And he's like, okay. And I was like, did you expect a complex answer? I was like, sure, why not?
Well, leave your comments down below if you would partake. For the ladies, you can flip the question to your liking.
There you go.
Right,
No,
let's.
I don't want cut this all out. This is
No, it's in. It's Bye everyone. Have a great.
Bye.
Fare thee well.